Starting today, he will assume the duties of a court blacksmith. The hero has put a lot of effort into fulfilling his dream of becoming the best blacksmith in the world. Sakura was in full bloom. She seemed to greet him. The guy will do his best to prove himself worthy. A girl came up to him and asked if he was a blacksmith. Her voice was beautiful. She looked like an aristocrat. The hero said that he was a blacksmith and asked how she knew that. The girl replied that he had a license sticking out of his pocket. A little more, and she would have fallen out. Without her, the hero would not be able to work. He thanked her. The girl said it was nothing. She also added that he was too young to be a blacksmith. The guy said he was starting his duties today and said his name was Fake. The hero said that he had been rehearsing and asked not to judge him harshly. The girl replied that everything was fine, and he was very kind. She said her name was Alicia. The girl confirmed that she was an aristocrat, but he didn't need to follow the formalities. She said she was supposed to be at the ball, but a lot of men were looking for her attention, so she ran away. Alicia asked if he knew who he wanted to become. She said she just wasn't sure about herself and didn't know what her true desires were. But she really wanted to know. Fake replied that he wanted to become the best blacksmith in the world. He knows that this will not be easy to achieve, but he will do his best. The girl said that he would and hoped that he would become the best blacksmith in the world. The main character did not expect such open support from her. He had only been mocked for that before. Since he's now serving at court, it turns out that he will often meet charming ladies. Maybe he'll even get married one day. The guy decided to start with a greeting. The first impression is extremely important. He said good morning. The man abruptly told him to get to work. He told him to repair the sword and not leave until he was done. The colorful life at court that the hero imagined is about to collapse. It has been 3 years since he took up his duties as a court blacksmith. His main responsibility was the restoration of weapons. The guy used to be a blacksmith in the village, but his talent was soon noticed, so he got to the court. He was full of hope, perfecting his dream craft. But the reality turned out to be completely different. Morgan told him not to slow down. The guy apologized to him. The man said that it would do no good. Since he was incompetent because of the blunder, he would deduct from his monthly salary. The hero wanted to say a word, but the blacksmith wouldn't let him. The guy didn't dare to object. Usually, a whole blacksmith shop worked with such a large amount of ammunition, but everyone hung on to him alone. It looked like he was actually being punished for having a run-in with that guy. The man said he was trying to teach him. The main character had been there for 3 years, but he was constantly getting angry, and he was already used to the pain. They were right. He's not ready to join the workshop yet. He doesn't have enough skill yet. That's why they're unhappy, and that's why they beat him. Therefore, his salary. There are no fewer days off, and it's all his fault. The guy was asked if he had thought about his behavior. If he had done it, then he needed to get up, since all the weapons should be ready before the end of the holidays. The guy said he understood them. The man said that they were invited to the ball, so the hero should not shirk and do his job properly. One of them said that the guests from the neighboring state had not visited the girl recently. They were supposed to join them at the feast, and they needed to greet the lady properly. Fake had a lot of work to do, and if he didn't get it done by the end of the week, he'd have to take night shifts. He should have the weekend off tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, and it would be great to catch his breath a little, but first he needs to finish with the weapon in order to have time to hand it over to the knights, so he will have to wait for rest. Even if he gets through by Monday, it will be a new working week. He needs at least a day off, and he can't do that anymore. If he hadn't been so incompetent, he would have finished everything much earlier. They, the blacksmiths, have 2 main duties. The first is the manufacture of weapons, and the second is the casting of spells. Enchantment increases the sharpness and durability of the sword. Due to this, the sword does not require additional maintenance and does not rust. This is also a magical effect. But the spell lasts about a week. Therefore, every week a huge number of weapons arrive at the blacksmith shop. Enchantment is not a tricky business. The first step is to familiarize yourself with the contents of the weapon's magic code. To do this, open a special window. All the information will be there. The correction is performed by magic power. Enchantment is performed by changing or adding magic symbols. If you handle the weapon carelessly or do not restore it for too long, the symbols will be erased. If the enchantment on the sword is still holding, all that is required is to upgrade them. And if they have completely disappeared, then apply them again. The hero felt good. He felt a pleasant aroma and something warm and soft. He did not understand what it was and could not believe that he had fallen asleep. That way he won't have time to finish the job. The girl said she was in pain, and the guy was surprised by her presence. He started apologizing to her multiple times. It seems that she was interested in blacksmithing, because every time she received an invitation to the ball, she came to him. Yesterday, Mr. Morgan discussed with the others that Lady Alicia has been invited. The fake didn't even change his clothes and stayed in his work uniform and didn't take a bath. The girl asked him what had happened and said that if he slept there, he would catch a cold. The hero said he was fine. The ball is already over, and probably the girl stayed the night and decided to look in on him before leaving. Anyway, he was supposed to finish his job yesterday. He doesn't remember much, but he seemed to have done everything that was required. Alicia said that he was very pale and started asking about his well-being. Mr. Morgan slapped him yesterday, but he usually didn't show any bruises. He must have been annoyed by his behavior yesterday. Nothing good awaited him. He liked Alicia, even though he understood that her status was not right. He won't get her, even if he tries his best. But still, I wanted to at least look decent in her eyes. He didn't want her to find him so pathetic. The guy was thinking of making a good impression on her as a man. The girl saw that he was in pain and said that she was very sorry that she did not have healing ointment. The hero asked her not to worry about it and apologized, and said that he still had a lot of work to do and didn't even have time to offer her tea. She told him not to worry about it, and asked if she could watch him work. The main character said he didn't mind. One character was missing. The marks disappeared from one sword. The girl said that she thought so, that he was so skilled and painstaking in his craft. There were a lot of weapons, and she asked if he had enchanted everything himself. She said it must be difficult and asked if all blacksmiths work like this. The hero replied that he was at the lowest level. If he couldn't handle even that, then he might even forget about his dream of becoming a better master. Alicia said she did not know that the path of a blacksmith was so thorny, and his work deserved respect, as befits a court armorer. The guy said that there was nothing special about it and he still lacked experience. The girl said that he was amazing because he was able to do so much on his own. Well, according to others, he's just incompetent. She asked him to share with her what was bothering him, and if he didn't tell her, she wouldn't let him go. He was ashamed, but he told her about the incident anyway. As soon as he started to stop, he couldn't, before he didn't share it with anyone. The girl was the Duke's daughter, and he didn't know if he had the right to behave like that in her presence. The guy said it was his fault, and he had no talent, and they were just trying to train him. She said it was nonsense. Alicia said she should have asked sooner. The hero said that he should apologize because he had told too much. His tears started flowing again, and he didn't want her to see him so pitiful. One guy burst into the room, called him incompetent, and told him to quickly enchant his sword. It was one of the knights. He was surprised that the Duchess was there. Normally, the hero would have already been attacked with fists. But this time, everything is different, and it should be all thanks to the girl. The guy was asked to enchant the sword. Apparently, the sword was used very recklessly. He only cast the spell a couple of days ago, but it's already almost broken. The hero told the knight to be more careful from now on, as the enchantment was significantly damaged. The man said that it was because they were imposed by an incompetent. The fake replied that he had cast quite powerful spells, but the material used to create simple knight swords was not of the best quality. In this regard, the possibilities of the charts are also limited. And if you forget yourself in battle, the magical structure will be disrupted. The restoration has been completed. The sword was in order and ready for use. The knight invited the girl to go to the boardwalk with him and said he would show her around. Alicia declined and wished him all the best. She asked the main character if he often encounters such an attitude. The guy thought that he couldn't even maintain his dignity in the presence of the girl he liked. Alicia said that he shouldn't strain himself so much, otherwise he would undermine his health. The main character said that if he couldn't handle his job at court, he wouldn't be able to work anywhere else. That's because they'll revoke his license. To be honest, he's already tried to leave. After working for a year, he told Mr. Morgan that he couldn't do this anymore and asked to be fired. He threatened that if the hero left, he would revoke his blacksmith's license. Without a license, he will not be able to practice his craft. Even if the secret continues to work, if discovered, you will be arrested for illegal activities. The girl said that she actually came because she wanted to offer him something. She asked him to get married. The hero did not believe that she put into it the meaning that a man and a woman live together. But the girl confirmed, and in the end, the meaning was just that. She said she didn't mean anything by it. Many men were trying to marry her, but she didn't want to marry any of them, so she needed him to be her cover. The main character was a blacksmith, just like her father, and she thought she could convince him. The girl comes from a family of blacksmiths. Her ancestors presented the king with a sword, which is now considered a national treasure, and in return were gifted with a title in order to advance in the service and become an aristocrat. Her father worked hard. The hero asked what he had to do with it. The girl replied that her family should always have a blacksmith. In the blood of one of the family members, there must be a talent for blacksmithing. That means it's not about the blood. If the innate talent is inherited, he can marry whomever he wishes. The girl asked him to become her fiancé. She said that there were a lot of candidates hanging around her, and she was very tired of their attention. She would like to get married when she meets someone she truly loves, and until then, she asked her fiancé to be a necessary measure to discourage the rest. Besides, if he goes to her homeland with her, she will make sure that he gets a new license. Then no one else will be able to torture him, so the offer is beneficial to both of them. The hero said that he lacks talent, so he is afraid that he cannot help her in any way. She said it wasn't true, and she'd seen him at work and always thought he was the most talented of all the blacksmiths. The girl said that it's not just about talent, but also his diligence and hard work. That's what she likes about him. He tried not to look at her that way. He was one step away from misinterpreting everything. The guy asked her how she thought it should be. The girl thought it was better to become a fake bride than to marry a stranger. The hero thought that you can't just say that, and she was confusing him. It's just a pretense. In fact, the girl most likely does not want such a relationship with him. But even so, she felt sorry for a man who had nowhere else to go. That's why the choice fell on him. Even if he is not destined to marry a girl, he has a chance to find happiness living under her as a blacksmith. He said that if she was really sure, then he would become her fiancé. Alicia said that in that case there would be another ball today, and after that they would go to her residence. The hero said that he understood and asked what time the departure was scheduled for. He will need to get fired. The guy didn't know if he could leave so easily. He was told that in case of dismissal, he would have to give 2 weeks' notice. The last time he brought it up, he got beat up a lot. But this time, he has a girlfriend, and they'll figure something out. She asked me not to call her lady anymore. Since he's her fiancé now, his status doesn't matter, so they have to address each other without titles. The main character said that, in other words, they were being honest. He couldn't do it anymore. He wanted to resign on his own. The man began to get very angry and said that he had put a lot of effort into the main character. Other men started saying that they had put a lot of effort into him, taught him etiquette, and said that no one would need him, and he had nowhere to go. Before, it wouldn't have occurred to him to object. He would have just kept quiet. But he made a promise to Alicia, and now he can't give up. The guy asked to be allowed to leave as he could no longer handle the job. The blacksmith asked if he had another job in mind, and what he would do if he left. The man asked to see his license. He tore her to shreds and said that the guy was no longer a blacksmith and would no longer be able to work in that country. They told him not to even hope to restore the certificate, since its issuance is their jurisdiction. If he wants to return it, he must stay and work for them. The hero thought that he was already sick of the country, and there was no point in having an identity card if it meant nothing there. The blacksmith said that if he carried out his duties for another year, he would get a promotion, and he would hire a new person. The main character said that he no longer works for him. The man said that he couldn't do anything else, and if he continued doing it illegally, he would be arrested. Another man said that if he left them, he would remain completely alone, since no one but them would tolerate such a mediocre person like him. And when he gets it, he'll crawl back in, and he'll still work for them. One of the employees said that they had almost accepted him into the union, and now no one would take him away. The guy thought that his foot would no longer be there, no matter what it cost him. The hero did not know if she had heard the conversation. If there was no sound insulation, now she heard everything that was said to him there. But he wouldn't want that. The man said that he had not seen her for a long time, and every day, she was becoming more charming. The girl would like to know if the fake got fired. The blacksmith said that he would have been of no use anyway. They created the most favorable conditions for him, but he neglected them, and it seems that he did not learn anything. The girl said that he got a job at her residence. The man said that he was not even able to forge a sword properly, and even more so to cast a spell. Alicia said that in her opinion, The guy is very gifted. If he doesn't mind, then she will take him away. The girl said she was interested in the blacksmith. For her, the main character is just a fake fiancé. But every day he falls in love with her more and more. He leaves the empire with her, and he's heading south to the kingdom. Upon arrival, her father would be waiting for them at the family compound. A day's journey. And they're there. The hero said that even if he was tired, it would be nothing. All in the forge, he worked without rest from dawn to dusk. The girl said that she had already notified her father, and he must already be waiting for them. The guy was worried. The fake apologized to her, and said that it seemed to him that it would be logical. He said he was sorry for trespassing. The engagement was fake, and he went too far. The girl said that even though he had taken her by surprise, there was nothing wrong with that, so he shouldn't worry. The main character asked if this meant that everything would look more natural if they improvised. Alicia said that it would be, and then the hero said that they would improvise. She said that the talent of a one-in-a-million guy and asked her father to take a look at how he casts spells. The man asked me to show him how he enchants the sword and update the enchantments that are placed on it. There were many magical symbols on it. Those charms were nothing compared to the ones he had restored at court. The sword must belong to a person of high rank, such as a knight captain. It was elaborately inlaid and lettered, and he had never seen such exquisite workmanship before. The man said he had 1 week, and if he couldn't handle it in that time, then he didn't belong there. The guy said the job wouldn't take long. Not all symbols have been corroded, so the task is not difficult. Only some of them are damaged. And whether it is necessary to put the correct characters in the resulting spaces, considering the signs at the beginning and at the end, he begins to understand the general idea of the enchantment. The main character said that it's not easy to reproduce the enchantment exactly, but it has a very similar effect. The man said that such a thing could not be. He could not even think that the hero was so gifted. The guy thanked him. The blacksmith said he was not ready to accept him as his daughter's future spouse. At first, it seemed to fake that he was quite harsh, but it seems that he was mistaken. The guy said he would work hard. The man replied that he would expect nothing less than a workshop in the mansion, now at his disposal. He told him to use the necessary materials freely, and he would take care of the supplies. In addition, he made a request for a license and asked him not to lose it anymore. Now the main character is allowed free activity. Since he is a blacksmith, he has the right to decide where to apply his skills. Before, he was only allowed to cast spells. He's always been forced, but now he can work with metal. The hero couldn't believe it. He was very grateful. The man said that some knights might need his services, and he had already notified the servants, so he can ask them. He will have to leave on business for a while. The man told him not to touch his daughter while he was away. The girl was glad that she had managed to convince her father. Fine said that he had not fully accepted the situation yet, but he would be happy to work on it. Alicia said that at least this was the first time he had praised someone like that, and it seemed like a good sign. The hero owed a lot to the girl. It would be wonderful if he could repay her kindness a little. There was a maid in front of him who introduced herself and said she would show him the manor. There was a blacksmith shop there, which was specially prepared for Lady Alicia's fiancé. For the most part, blacksmith workshops are arranged in the same way. There was even a forge. He can't remember the last time he saw something like this. Usually, the work is limited only to magic, and such tools are not often resorted to. Nevertheless, it's great to have the opportunity to use them from time to time. The girl said that if anything else was needed, he should let her know about it, and she would take care of everything. The guy said that the materials and everything else were available and thanked her, saying that he didn't need anything else. Leafy said that in that case, she asked to be allowed to show him his room. That's where he's going to live. She repeated herself and said that if he needed anything, he should contact her. The hero thanked her and said that she had shown him everything there was, and if anything was needed, he would let her know. It seemed to him that life was starting to get better. Until recently, he worked in conditions that could undermine his health at any moment. Well, now he has a wonderful and kind girl next to him as his fiancée. And even if the engagement isn't real, it couldn't be better. And most importantly, now he is truly free. He no longer has to worry about work, which should be ready in the morning. He will have time to sleep properly, and he can take a day off at least every day. However, this was already overkill. It would not only complicate the engagement, but also significantly damage his reputation. He doesn't have to do anything, and that's what he has free time for. In any case, He starts his duties tomorrow. And now he decides for himself how and how long he should work before. He couldn't even take a step without being beaten. He hopes that every day will be just as happy now. The maid said that the guy was safely accommodated in the room assigned to him. The heroine thanked her for her hard work. She said it went even better than she expected. Leafy asked when the news should be expected. She doesn't understand anything. When she left the residence, she said she would ask him to become her husband. The girl said that's not what she said, and it's a shame. She said she tried to ask him to marry her. It's not a real relationship, but they talked about getting married anyway, so it's not a problem. It was a sudden wedding, and it's strange that she's so calm when she thinks about it. After all that has happened, she feels a little awkward. The maid asked if the wedding date had been set. Now she realized that the heroine had proposed to her fiancé, and this was also a cover. Alicia said she tried and did her best. The girl said that she believed that if he was at least somewhat interested, then he would understand everything from the girl's behavior. The maid said that it was not just noticeable, but obvious. The heroine thought she was good at hiding things, but now she's even more embarrassed. Leafy said it was just a cover story, but she had already made a statement, so they should start wedding preparations as soon as possible. However, the father has not yet blessed them. In this case, the main character must first prove himself as a blacksmith, and they will wait for the master to evaluate his abilities. The heroine said she thinks the maids are right. Their family has made a name for themselves in blacksmithing, so she can only marry a very gifted man. As the future daughter of a noble family, she loses her freedom of choice in love. She always knew that. The maid said she could marry the man she loved, but I guess it's too early to be happy. The man was asked what the blacksmith would do and whether he would hire a new person, since the fake had not returned yet, and he stood out too much for an apprentice. The other men agreed with this, and the blacksmith began asking about the house to which Alicia belongs. Their family was known only by their title, but it was rumored that they sometimes chose the most talented blacksmiths to marry off their daughters. Initially, their family was not just blacksmiths. One look at the fake is enough to understand that he is incompetent, and it is obvious that no one will want to hire him. The man tried to give him a couple of orders, but he couldn't even hold a hammer. He believed that eventually the guy would be fired. The hero has lost his way, but in the end he will crawl back to them. It remains only to figure out how long the family will keep him before he throws him out. The man thought that it would be a maximum of a week and no more, and the one who had nowhere else to go would eventually return to them. In this case, he will have a week's worth of work, and plus for the week he missed, they will assign everything to him again. Thus, everything is decided for 2 weeks ahead. It is not necessary to start. Now they will have enough time by the time the main character returns. He deserved this punishment. The man said that, first of all, he needed to explain himself to the knights. The blacksmith said that the hero himself would realize that he was incompetent. It was only a matter of time, and then he would again chase him like a wayward servant. The main character woke up before dawn again, as it had already become a habit. During his time at court, he always got up at first light so that he could do all the work alone, sometimes to finish what's left from yesterday. This was also part of the daily routine. Casting spells, new orders duties are more than that of an ordinary blacksmith. Every day from dawn to midnight over and over again. Well, now that he wakes up, it's not that early yet. It's been quite a while since he's been in the forge. The guy decided to get to work. The witch's ore looked great. Witch's ore is a special metal that is sensitive to enchantments. It is indispensable for blacksmithing, because only this material can be enchanted. Enchantment greatly increases the strength of steel, and most importantly, it's easy to get it from the demons. To extract iron, you need to stay in the mines all the time. When one is empty, you will need to look for the next one. To get the witch's ore, just kill the demon. The demonic leather gloves are quite durable, and they withstand high temperatures perfectly. Blacksmiths use fire, water, and earth magic. To begin with, the hero will need fire. There are several types of witch's ore. The rarest and highest quality is masked by Class C. It is followed by classes A, B, C, D, and, respectively, F. Ore of Class F and E is most often used, not the highest quality. Today he will try something simple to stretch himself. The guy is not going to create the most powerful weapon in the world, so this should be enough. He decided to make a knife. The ore is red hot, and it's time to send it to the casting mold. After that, the temperature is increased even more. In the old days, blacksmiths tempered metal in a fire pit. Today, this technology is considered obsolete. The material becomes pliable and soft. Now the hero will create a clay mold with earth magic and pour metal into it. The mold is then cooled by water magic, and a steel ingot is extracted from it. It is softened slightly by heating, after which it is given the desired shape. You need to listen to the sound and cool and heat the steel several times. This will improve its quality. And as the quality of the metal increases, its frequency and magical potential increase. He doesn't have much time for a knife today. And next time he'll prepare his materials in advance. He wanted to do a lot of things. It turned out to be almost the shape he had planned. And now it's time to work with clay. It will cool the area of the blade and increase the strength, as well as enhance the magical potential of the material. Before you start sanding, it is important to distribute the magic evenly over the surface. You need to prepare some cold water in the area of the cutting edge. The pattern immediately appears. Now you need to use wind magic to sharpen the blade. Now its surface is smooth and shiny, and all that remains is to cast an enchantment. The main character made a knife and decided to try it out in action. The sharpness and mass were in perfect order. He hadn't done this for a long time and spent 3 whole hours. It seemed to be breakfast time, which he had completely forgotten about. Previously, due to the amount of work, he only had enough time for rare snacks right at the forge. He noticed the girl and asked how long she had been standing there. The girl replied that it was about an hour. The maid told her that he was working in the workshop today, so she came. The heroine asked me not to look at her like that because she was embarrassed. He screwed up again and realized that the girl was right because he started staring at him intently. The girl said that she was still his fiancée, so if the moment was right, then there was nothing wrong with the looks. The main character began to think a lot. Since he was her fake fiancé, he decided that there was no need to think too much, since the girl only pretended that she did not understand who was staring where. She had come all this way to see how he worked, and he hadn't even noticed her presence. The girl asked him not to think about it as he was working hard on the knife, and she was glad to watch. Alicia said that the knife turned out to be very beautiful. It had a sharp blade, and it was well enchanted. The hero said that he tried very hard. If he had a little more time, he would have done even better. If he had known that she would be watching, would have put in more effort. The guy was surprised that she could handle a blade. The girl said that she was taught the basics of fencing quite a bit just for self-defense. The main character said that he was a little distracted and she looks beautiful. He said it was amazingly beautiful. It's not a real engagement, but the girl so convincingly maintains the appearance of a relationship with him, and it looks sincere. At such moments, he can't help but wonder if she really cares. Although, if you think about it that way, surely almost any girl can convincingly pretend. At least that's what he heard. She invited him to go to breakfast with her. Alicia asked if he was always good at casting spells. The guy replied that the work always had to be done quickly and efficiently. He had a lot of responsibility, so over time, he got better. Thanks to that infernal money, he can now cast spells quickly and efficiently. That's why spending time with her warms his heart so much. If you think about it, when he went to the forge, he smelled bread. The main character said he couldn't even remember the last time he'd seen such treats. The girl said that if he didn't mind, she would like to know more about his past. He usually worked late into the night, so he often didn't have time to eat anything during the day. And if he could find time for lunch, he ate while he was working. He didn't have time to taste the food. Just swallow it while it's still possible. But now, when he shares a meal with her, it's the best breakfast of his life. So it's just tears of happiness. It was very tasty. The girl suggested that he go to the city to show the surroundings. Alicia said that she hardly makes acquaintances in the city, but many introduce themselves to her father at festivals, and someone may recognize her face. People in the city don't take kindly to her beauty, and if they recognize her, they won't be able to take quiet walks. The girl said it was like they were on a date. The guy replied that it really looked like a date, but he didn't quite understand why there was so much trouble. That's because he's not her real fiancé, so he doesn't understand why she's putting so much effort into dating him. The guy said he thought that if he succeeded as a blacksmith and earned her father's approval, then that would be enough. The hero suggested that she didn't want to marry some stranger, so she got engaged to him for show. He's just a cover, and she doesn't have to pretend they're on a date. The maid said that the blacksmith wished the girl to marry a gifted blacksmith and tried to promote her happiness in his manner. He also wanted to make sure that she would marry for love. That's why he didn't rush her into marriage. Alicia said that this date was also very important to her, so she asked him not to worry about anything. Leafy said she would leave and wished them a wonderful time. The main character did not notice her presence at all, although nothing less is expected from the accompanying servants. She was aware of the nature of their relationship, and it made her feel a little better that someone else knew about it. The girl returned the conversation about how to influence her father's opinion. She asked if she could hold the hero's hand. They will need to walk by the hand, and this will influence her father's opinion. The girl confirmed this, and said that you never know when you will catch the eye of one of his knights. The guy has already taken her hand, but now they're on a date, so he's a little more worried than usual. He can't remember the last time he walked around the city so calmly. From now on, he doesn't have to rush anywhere anymore. Even considering that he no longer has to work himself out so much, he will still make every effort to improve his skills. If this continues, perhaps her father will accept him. The girl asked him not to do anything hasty. The man said that the fake had left them more than a week ago and still hadn't returned. He needed to be a little patient, since the family's residence is far from the capital, and in case of dismissal, he needs to get there for quite a long time. The blacksmith said that this was a predictable outcome, and they were the only ones on whose mercy he could rely. He didn't even have a blacksmithing license, and without documents, he wouldn't be able to work, so he had no choice but to come to court for more. The conditions for his return are simple. No payment for the first 2 months, then only pennies. The captain came to them. He had an order for charms. The holder of the highest knighthood in the country has arrived to them. The blacksmith was happy to accept an order from such a person. Even though he has his own blacksmith tea, his genius is undeniable. He came to ask for it. The men were surprised that such a distinguished person had paid a personal visit. However, the captain wanted to ask something. He wanted to talk to the man who had enchanted his sword. The sword was assigned to an ordinary knight, and their apprentice was working on it. The captain said it was a blessing for their current knights. When he was a simple knight, the swords they were given were barely enchanted and practically indistinguishable from ordinary ones. It's true that in those days, the blacksmith didn't really cast spells, and there was no way. A fake is far from a decent caster. His charms are always so ridiculous, and even with a minimum of effort, he would have done his job multiple times. But the captain was saying something strange. The swords he remembers from those times were just like trash. The captain said that the blacksmith who enchanted the swords so well, even for a simple knight, deserves a lot of praise, and he would like to entrust his own sword to this fake. He said that he would like to be the one to cast the spell. The captain said that he himself did not have the ability to read magical writing, but his blacksmith said that the work done on the blade was excellent. He came there hoping to meet the master. The blacksmith said that the main character does not have a special gift, and he let him go for a while. Maybe he managed to cast a good spell once, but this is rather an exception, and he was just lucky. Fake casts dozens, even hundreds of charms a week, and a couple of them may have worked out well. But he has absolutely no potential, and he cannot become a master no matter how much effort he puts in. Nevertheless, the captain would like to teach him a job, but for now he will leave the sword with them. The blacksmith suggested that he cast a spell, since he is the head of the workshop and, of course, he will cope with the task better than the main character. The captain said that since the guy was on vacation, it meant that he would be back soon. He had time and could wait until then. He asked me to convey his respects to him and will be looking forward to the results of his work. The captain said he relies on them, and when the job is done, just let one of his knights know. If even the work of the main character leads him to such delight, then it means that the work of a man should lead him to delight. The blacksmith decided that this was his chance to catch luck by the tail, as such a chance comes once in a lifetime. He decided that he would cast the spell himself. The man said that since Fake's charms made such an impression on him, he would surely exceed all expectations, and when that happened, he would be able to become the captain's personal blacksmith. Anyone can do this better than the main character. The man said that he would not miss the chance and the benefit would go to him, and he would take on this job. This is his order. Becoming the captain's personal blacksmith, he will write his name in the history of blacksmithing. As the future fifth son of a count's family, he did not have broad prospects, never thought that he would get a chance like this, and now he runs a court forge. There was a clock tower there, and it had the most beautiful view of the city. There was a long staircase in front of them, and the hero was already tired. The girl said they were almost there. She said it was her favorite place, and the guy replied that it was very beautiful there. She thinks the view of the night city or the sunrise will be just as good. The guy replied that it was very beautiful there at night and offered to stay until sunset. The girl said she would love to see it. He was sweating as he climbed the steps, and now was chilly in the wind, and he was thinking about where to get out of the wind. The main character needed to figure out what to talk about, as it was awkward. They caught a scene of betrayal by one man. There were two girls swearing at him. The man made excuses that it was just a mistake, but the girls didn't listen to him. The blacksmith said that the hero is a master blacksmith, so he needs him to test his abilities. The new license will allow him to trade in the city, so he can craft whatever he wants and sell it in the city store. However, he should not remind that he is his daughter's fiancé. The guy replied that he would start tinkering from today. As for supplies, the man will provide him with any amount of grade F and E ore. He will prepare the higher quality material on his own. He will be able to make tools for ordinary citizens, and even this class will be more than enough. It was time to really get back to the craft, and first he decided to prepare the materials. The most common type of weapon that can be traded in this shop is a long sword. First, you need to decide on the quantity. Quality also needs to be taken care of. Even if the weapon is of high quality and well-balanced, it will not be bought if the price is too high. His clients will mostly be adventurers, and their ranks vary. But there are quite a few C-rank adventurers, and most of them are D or E. Ideally, an adventurer needs a sword that won't need to be changed when changing ranks, and it might be worth making something similar to the swords he forged for knights. It had been a long time since he had made long swords, and he would have to try harder. The molds must be strong enough not to deform under the influence of high temperatures. First, you need to melt the witch's ore. If you pour liquid ore into a mold and cool it with water magic, the material cools down pretty quickly. It seemed that everything was almost ready. He did it well. We need to raise the temperature again to harden the metal and polish it with wind magic. You need to make a pair of wooden nails that will secure the handle. Now connect them and hammer the nails into the drilled holes. At first, he was going to fix them at the base of the handle, but preferred a different method. Thus, he made a simple long sword. The hero wondered if he was sharp enough and decided to make one more of the same. At court, quite powerful spells were applied to weapons, which were sent for correction every week, because the knights could at any moment send them to fight monsters that a simple guard could not defeat. An ordinary adventurer wouldn't need such powerful charms. In the end, he made 3, and he doesn't understand where so much strength came from. If his magic had weakened, he would not have been able to continue. But it seems that he has enough power, which means that the processing at court led to a constant shortage of them. He managed to make 5 balls, and he decided to leave it at that. He wanted to wipe his face. The girl was scared, and the guy replied that he had won because she hadn't noticed him at all. The main character said that he was surprisingly almost not tired, so he could have done a couple more, and the girl was surprised by his endurance. He's been working in much harsher conditions for the last 3 years, so now he's not tired at all, and thinks he really should make another one sword. The heroine said he needs to rest because he's been working tirelessly since morning. During his court service, this amount of work would have taken all his strength, but he seems to be getting better. The girl said that Wu is obsessed with work. Tomorrow, he wanted to go sell swords in the city. In the next 2 days, merchants will gather in the city. So far, the hero just wants to sell a couple of swords and see what grade they deserve, which turned out to be quite decent considering that they are forged from E-class ore. In his native village, such work was appreciated quite highly, so much so that in the end he got into the court forge, despite his low birth. But at court he was completely incompetent, and his feelings were not spared at all. In any case, now he will need to assert himself a little more confidently. The guy said he had already decided on the price. He said it was a fair price for an adventurer's main weapon. The hero said he would try to sell them tomorrow. The girl replied that his finest hour was approaching. She said she would help him. The guy said he wouldn't use her influence to boost sales. She said she would wear a mask in that case. Alicia said that everything will be fine, and besides, you can say that he is doing all this for her, so she wants to help. The man agreed, but on condition that her identity remain a secret. The guy said he was looking forward to tomorrow. The heroine said she would do her best to show people that his products were the best. She put in a lot of effort for him, and he was worried that he wouldn't sell anything. But now it's simply impossible. This is his first business venture. Today he will be trading for the first time. Before he came to court, he worked as a barter worker. He gave away a dagger, armor, and swords, and in return received food, clothing, and shelter. The village was small, and they all learned from each other. At court, he did not have time to listen to the intricacies of market relations and believes that by that time, they had only become more complicated. So he cannot understand with certainty what price should be set for his work. If he pays the entrance fee, he will receive permission to buy and sell goods for the day. He shouldn't have mentioned the girl's name in public, because if they found out that he had connections with the Duke, he would break his promise to his father, so he shouldn't be careful. The girl needed to come up with a nickname, so the guy came up with an alternative name for her. Trading was allowed only on fair days. To sell goods at other times, you need to have your own shop and special documents. The hero decided to start with an ordinary counter, and in the future they will open a real shop. He was excited by the prospect of real trading. The guy applied for a trading license and was able to stake out a place. So far, he will only put up 2 swords for sale. Not only did he have no customers, no one even approached him. Of course, he didn't expect it to be easy. But I didn't think it would be like this. There was a crowd at the next counter. For others, everything looked more beautiful. So next time, you'll need to come up with a better design. The girl began to invite customers to the sale. She said she was probably more of a hindrance than a help. The hero said that he was glad that she had called the customers. In truth, he was just glad that they were standing together. They were never approached. She was sure that people would be interested in high-quality swords. When he was working in the village, they didn't start contacting him right away either. He knew that the most difficult thing was the first deal, but he is confident in his work. Any adventurer from his target ranks will like the swords. A customer approached them asking if they were selling long swords. He wanted to move from one rank to another. The sword was comfortable and light. The guy said he had cast a special spell on him. Since he was a rank F, it was possible that he might be a little short on funds. The hero said that other swords are more difficult to handle. In other circumstances, he would have started haggling. But in this case, it is out of the question. You shouldn't be so open about how much money you have with you. The guy said that the price of the ball was actually much higher than the one offered. In fact, this is not true. Even if he had made concessions, he would not have lowered the price. But today he came there to make himself known. The adventurer said that the price was justified, as the sword was really good. The hero said that for the first time, he could make an exception to give it for the offered price. But in return, if he knows the adventurers who need the sword, then he can tell them about it. What he didn't immediately think about was that the recommendations might attract customers. Every week on the fair day, he will be behind the counter with a flag. The buyer said he would tell his friends about it. He got less than he had hoped for, but he was glad of at least that much revenue. The Duke said that he would supply him with materials in any quantity, so for now there is no need to worry about costs. They finally sold the first sword. The main character has achieved the goal he set for today. He knew that it was unlikely that he would be able to sell everything, so he set out to sell at least one. Now that the young adventurer would show his friends his sword, the customer base would gradually grow. The girl said it would definitely work, since he made the swords, and next time it would be better than today. It was his first revenue on the market, and he thought it was a good start. He decided that he needed to report the result to the man. The main character said that a total of 1 long sword was sold. As a thank you for the materials and access to the workshop, he hoped that he would accept the money. The man said that as for the witcher, he had no plans to cut supplies, so he shouldn't worry about it. However, his earnings meant that he had lowered the price to make the deal. The man had a lot to work on. He said he couldn't trust his daughter with this state of affairs. The hero said that sales would only grow in the future, beyond any doubt. The blacksmith said that if he thought so, he should convince him not with a word, but with a result. Now the guy needs to study the market in more detail in order to understand how to increase sales. There you can find a lot of gun shops with a huge assortment, so he decided to explore them better. First, he wanted to see how the goods were displayed in those shops. There was a demand for long swords. Of the 2 equally effective options, people tend to prefer the one that looks more impressive. Perhaps it should also decorate the handles with some kind of carving. He decided to diversify his range with daggers, since after all, they could be used as throwing weapons. Universal knives are also in demand. Housewives often use them in everyday life. You can meet representatives of all ranks there, and it can be useful. At some point, it will be useful to him. If he needs money, he can also earn there. The main character said that adventurers don't change. The girl replied that adventurers live to the fullest. The guy went to register. He found the adventurer registration department. Since there was no queue at all, he thought it wouldn't take long. To register, you only need two things, a name and a personal file. He doesn't have a personal file, so he'll have to fill out an application from zero. He drew up a guild member's card and asked for information about his magical abilities. He was thanked for the registration, it was completed, and in case of loss of documents, he needs to contact them as soon as possible with the first card. He was given free of charge, but in case of loss, a small amount will be charged. The main character saw how some men began to bother the girl. The guy started defending her. He told the girl that they had to go. Fate took her hand and told her they were done. The men started shouting at him. He told her to move through the crowd. One of the adventurers started to follow them. He bumped into one of the people present. The man reacted aggressively. The girl said that she had never been approached like this before, so she was confused. She said she was a little scared. The guy said it was his fault and he should have taken her with him. She replied that everything was fine as he showed up on time. Besides, I was her maid nearby, so I would have intervened in case of danger. There was still time before the next fair days, so the hero decided to try to improve the quality of the daggers. First, you need to melt the ore in the classical way. Then you need to pour it into a mold created with the help of earth magic and make a steel plate. The next step is to improve the quality of the steel, which is ore contains many undesirable components. He uses magical techniques to extract them from the material. The guy will raise the temperature of the plate and constantly apply the hammer, maintaining the desired heat level. This must be repeated several times to bring the quality of the metal to perfection. He decided to check the magic code. The runes were still in order. If magic techniques are applied incorrectly, they can destroy the magic code. He should work on directing the magical flow when working with the hammer. It was still a little rough, but he managed to fix something. The final settings of the charms are carried out at the very end, when all the rest of the work has already been done. At this point, the last runes are restored. It is not necessary to cast a spell from the very beginning. This process can be postponed to the end. It's time to shape the plate into a knife. You need to cool it with water magic, and then polish it with the wind. The edge of the blade was perfectly designed, and there were no problems with the sharpness. The knife can be used both in battle and for butchering meat. The magic component took a lot of time. Due to this, the quality of the knife is higher than that of a standard weapon. He decided to take a break, otherwise the girl would worry. The guy thought he could do one more later. It really excited him that he couldn't stop and decided that he would make the girl worry again if he didn't stop. Alicia came to him and the guy invited her to look at his work. She said the quality is higher than last time. The girl said that he always knows how to impress. He thanked her and said that after her words he wanted to do one more. She said that there were only a few days before the start of the auction, but suggested not to rush anywhere. The girl said that she really enjoys watching him work, but he spends so much time at the forge and she gets lonely. She understands that this is important to him, but she would be happy if she could spend even a second more time with him. The guy thought that she had noticed the maid and therefore immediately assumed the role of the bride. Was very convincing. You never know when their eyes are on you, so they should always act like they're head over heels in love. The main character said that he would like to spend as much time with her as possible, even if only for a second. So he decided to finish the job. He suggested we spend the day together. Alicia thanked him for agreeing. Alicia said that they were a bit far from where they were last time, to which the main character said that he wanted to leave earlier. But it seems he got a little distracted. The guy said that it would be better to stay in one place, which people remember, but here it is difficult. Whoever is first, he takes. He asked about whether the swords are displayed as last time. He then added that the quality of the knives and daggers was higher, but they required less materials to produce, to which she replied that she understood. He continued and said that he planned to sell them for about 20,000, 30,000 crowns. At that very moment, the girl began to shout loudly that she greeted all passers-by, after which she offered to take a look at their goods. Alicia said that, as expected, it would be difficult to attract customers. He agreed with her, and thought to himself that her voice sounded clear, so people heard the words, but did not come to the shop. The protagonist thought that he had no trading acumen at all, poor Alicia. At that moment, his name was called. The girl said that he should speak with pride. He has wonderful products, so he should behave accordingly, more confidently. The main character smiled at her and said that it was true. She was really right. After which he and the girl began to call for clients. The fake said that an hour had already passed, after which he turned to the girl and asked if she was tired. To which she replied that everything was fine. She was trying. At that moment, the main character heard a voice. It was two guys. They said that here he is, after which they greeted him. The guy told them that he brought someone. As promised, it's Weezer. He's also an adventurer. They're on the same team now. By the way, he didn't introduce himself last time. His name is Ibis. The protagonist thanked him from the bottom of his heart, after which he also gave his name. At that moment, Weezer began to study the assortment. The guy with the ears on his head asked if he could look at a certain sword, to which he was answered positively, at which point Ibis said that the sword he bought here was so comfortable to use. He added that it was sharp, light, fits in the hand wonderfully, and was not even close to his past. Fike said that he was grateful to him, and was very glad that he liked it. Ibis said that thanks to such a sword he rose to E rank last week. The guild said that the progress was very rapid, and now he's like a celebrity there. Fake congratulated him on this, after which the protagonist asked if he hadn't achieved this through his abilities, to which Ibis replied that this was not true. At this point, Weezer asked how much the sword he had chosen cost, to which the protagonist replied whether the price of 40,000 crowns would suit him. The guy blushed and asked if he could sell it for 30,000, to which Fake agreed with him and said that, in return, if they like the quality, then let them recommend them to their friends, to which he received a positive response. Ibis looked around the counter and said that today they also had knives, to which he was told that they had a wide range of applications and would be useful both in battle and for cutting up prey. The guy said that a knife for prey was a tempting idea, after which he asked about the price of these knives, to which the main character replied that it was 30,000 each. Ibis asked if he could give in a little, and he apologized for his question. Fake thought that this time he had a chance to bargain. 30,000 was the maximum price, so he could give in a little. He said out loud that since he came with a friend today. Then he went on and said what he thought about the price of 20,000. They said that was great. The guy turned to him and asked if he could look at the sword for cutting. The protagonist of the sword that was given to him then examined it and said that the spell on it had worn off a little. He asked Awaz if he knew how they worked. He said he knew that blacksmiths sometimes put them on to make a sword better. Fake said that there was a magic code inside each sword, and his was starting to wear out. The guy asked the main character if it could be fixed somehow, to which the latter replied that, of course, he is a blacksmith, so it will not be difficult. The first time he will update the charms for free. When the main character finished, he said that everything was ready, there should be no problems now. Next time the price of the service will be 5,000 crowns, so he asked to handle the weapon carefully. Fake explained that they also offer such services, so if anything happens, they can contact them. To which Ibis said that he would definitely do it if he earned a lot of money, after which they said goodbye. Alicia thanked the guys for the purchase, to which Ibis responded, after which he wanted to ask who this girl was, to which the main character said that it was his assistant Ali. Ibis asked him if she was his lover by any chance. The protagonist thought to himself, why is this guy even talking like that? Fake thought to himself that Alicia was actually his fiancée, but it was only for show, so he wouldn't want to talk about it so openly. Ibis said that he understood everything. It must be great to work together with his beloved. He himself dreams of one day starting to travel with some nice adventurer. The protagonist said that in that case, he wished him luck. He thought to himself about what was wrong with him. At that moment, Weather put his hand on his friend's shoulder and thanked them again for their help. Fake thought that he couldn't imagine that he would be able to earn so much. The efforts invested last week are already starting to pay off. The main character turned to the girl and asked her that everything was going well, but he stopped short because he saw that she had a strange expression on her face. The girl said that she was his fiancée, so he could tell. To which he asked about what if her identity was revealed because of this, and their engagement was not real. Alicia said that they had succeeded, that they had good sales today, to which the protagonist agreed with her and said that he hoped that those two would achieve a lot with his weapon in their hands. The guy said that he would be interested to know how their fate would turn out. After some time, He said that it was already noon. As a result, after the guys, they were no longer able to sell anything. Fake thought to himself that they were just unlucky. It is important not to rush and do everything gradually. At that moment, a girl called out to him and said that they had a buyer. The blonde guy in the hat said that he saw that they were sewing swords and a dagger. He rubbed his chin. The protagonist confirmed his words and then asked if he wanted to take a look. The guy took one of the knives, then took it out of its sheath and asked if it was really made of E-class witch ore, to which Fake replied that he was right. He thought to himself that this guy looked like a trader. He must be very experienced, since he managed to sell his goods so quickly. The blonde said that he had been in his business for quite some time. The weapons were of such high quality that you couldn't tell right away that they were made of E-class ore. He looked at everything again and said that since he had swords and knives, he needed each one. After that, they started to bargain. The main character would like to sell for 50,000 crowns, but this guy is an excellent bargainer. The Fake said that he was giving up, and in that case, he would give everything for 35,000 crowns. He also asked him if he could recommend his products to other people, to which the guy said yes. In the end, he lowered the price much more than he wanted, as if he had torn it from his heart. At that moment, the client said that it would be especially difficult to forget his assistant in the mask. Fake thanked him and asked if it was too conspicuous. He replied that, in fact, he approached the counter precisely because of the mask, and he was also attracted by her beautiful voice. Alicia thanked him. The blonde waved his hand, after which he said that they would see each other again. The main character agreed with him and thanked him. Fake turned to the girl and said that it was all thanks to her, he thanks her. To which she replied that it was all his. It seems that thanks to this client, they will be able to attract many new ones. The main character said that he would be happy if it worked out that way. Today, he sold 2 swords and 2 knives. The total revenue was 85,000 crowns. Quite a jump compared to last week. After some time, he brought the proceeds to Mr. Gorel. He said that this time, everything went more successfully, but there are many other blacksmiths in the area who are capable of making such a sum. Fake thought that the amount really wasn't that incredible. He still wasn't good enough. He thanked the man out loud and said that in that case, he would go. But he was stopped. The protagonist had already asked if something was wrong, to which the man replied that a blacksmith named Robert would come here tomorrow to propose. Mr. Gorel said that in the future he will inherit the title of his house and become a viscount. Fike said that everything is clear to him. He thought to himself that he was really one of the contenders for Alicia's hand. She said that such company was a burden to her. It turns out that he appeared because he himself does not cope well with his duties. The man continued to speak and said that this Robert is a very ambitious person. The protagonist simply echoed his words. The gentleman also continued to praise this guy. At one point, Fake asked the man what he meant by this, to which the latter explained that Robert is a man with a high libido. The protagonist thought that Gorel shouldn't repeat this with such a stone face, because he was already barely holding back his laughter. The men said that Robert had told him before that he had designs on Alicia, but it seemed that the girl had not been attracted to him because of his persistence. Fake thought that he had always thought that she did not like such men. Gorel said that, however, they should not show Robert even a bit of disrespect. He could give the impression of being a somewhat sincere person. He thought that his talents were not enough, so there would be other men. Mr. Gorel said that he was worried that Alicia would not be happy with him. In this regard, the main character is better. The latter thanked him, but thought to himself that in his eyes he really didn't look like a ladies' man. Although he was right, he had no experience with girls at all. Gorel said that he shouldn't imagine anything unnecessary. He hasn't accepted it yet, but he is looking for a golden mean between satisfying his demands and ensuring the happiness of his daughter. Fake thought that the man was a wonderful father. His aristocratic status obliged him to think about a good match, but he sincerely cared about his daughter's happiness. He said that he would not let him down. The man asked him to try. The main character thought that his heart was not in the right place. The gentleman loved Alicia so much, and he was deceiving him. He placed expectations on him and looked after him, and he acted so disrespectfully. In any case, to maintain his position, he needs to improve his craft. How difficult everything is. At this moment, he returned to the room. Alicia asked about the fact that her father did not recognize him, to which Fake said that this is true. He said that his sales level is not yet satisfactory, to which the girl said that they tried so hard. He thought that she was dressed a little lighter than usual. She should be more careful in such things. She was, after all, one of the most beautiful and noble girls in the world. The protagonist thought that Mr. Gorel must be worried about the same thing. Then he stopped himself and said that it was enough to think about all sorts of vulgarities. Fake said that at the moment he can only trade once a week, and to appear on the market more often, he needs to open his own shop as soon as possible. But even in this case, customers will not immediately flock in. Therefore, first you need to make a name for yourself in the trading circles. Alicia said that he was right. It was quite expensive to run your own shop. You first need to acquire regular customers. The protagonist thought that he still had so much to do. But since it was for Alicia, if he couldn't cope with the role of her cover, in that case, another candidate for her hand would appear only because of his incompetence. He addressed her out loud and said that a certain aristocrat named Robert would arrive tomorrow, to which Alicia said that she knew it seemed she would not be able to avoid his company, to which the protagonist apologized to her. The guy said that, by playing her fiancé, he had to prevent other candidates from appearing, but he failed. To which the girl asked him not to worry. Alicia said that she was not comfortable communicating with people like him, so she asked him, when the meeting with him was over, if she could see him, to which he replied that he would be in the workshop. She could come anytime. The girl thanked him for this. Then she asked him if something had happened because he was acting a little differently than usual. The main character thought about what she was talking about. If you think about it, she's been sitting here like this for quite a long time. The guy asked her what she meant. He thought to himself what she wanted to hear. She was dressed so seductively. Did she really want to test him? To which Alicia thought about it and said that they say that if you dress like that, men will fall in love with you. Fake started asking who said that, to which she replied that it was Leffy. He thought that this is the evil genius here. They want to hear his opinion, what to use this on other suitors. The main character said that he would speak not for himself, but in general. To be honest, if he were married to her, then at this moment they would already be doing something. But he didn't have time to finish, because the girl interrupted him to ask what they would do. To which he immediately waved her off and said that nothing like that. She asked him if he was already in love. Fake said that he thought this meant that men in general would definitely fall in love with her. To which she responded that it was clear, and then asked if he liked her dress. Alicia started talking about how nature had not given her much, and then asked if it was a problem for him. The guy wondered what kind of question she was asking him. She asked him if he really liked it when a girl had big ones. She asked him about his opinion of her body. In his mind, he asked her to stop, and asked why she was doing this to him. A new day dawned. The men were talking about how Mr. Morgan was now the Knight Commander's personal blacksmith. In that case, the position of Forge Master would soon become vacant. They asked if they would apply. At this time, Morgan was thinking that today the Knight Commander will evaluate the enchantment he put on his sword. He wonders what reward he will receive for this. He hopes that he will receive the position of personal blacksmith. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. It was the knight, who said that he had not seen them for a long time. Morgan thought to himself that he was rather offering him a promotion, but the guy asked if Fake was here. The man was shocked. He thought to himself that they were interested in the main character again. Out loud, he said that his return was still expected. The knight said that, nevertheless, he would like to talk about the sword that he had entrusted to him. Morgan interrupted him and said that Fake was currently on vacation, so he took over some of his duties. The knight said that everything was now clear to him, to which Morgan asked what he would say about the sword. At that moment, the guy got really angry, surprising the people around him. Then he swung his sword, which immediately fell apart, after which the knight jumped up to Morgan, grabbed him by the collar, put his sword to him, and said that this was a very bad thing. Morgan immediately asked him what he meant, to which the knight replied that he had asked his personal blacksmith to look at his charms, who immediately said that he had never seen such a mediocre piece of work. The knight said that if you use the sword at full power, it will crumble into pieces. He does not want to deal with such an incompetent person anymore. He gave clear orders that the work should be done by Fake. After that, the guy asked again about where the main character was. He also asked about where he was on vacation. Morgan thought he was scared. This was the first time in his life he had been shouted at like this. Usually, the mere mention of his father's name, one of the most powerful men in the country, would have people falling on their faces. The other employees of the forge said that Fake no longer worked there, to which the knight asked why this was happening, and then added that he was so talented that even his master would like to meet him. At this time, Morgan was thinking that Fake was really so talented, it was impossible. It couldn't be that the man's own work was worse. The man said that Fake had left his position of his own free will, to which the knight asked if he had really quit. They answered in the affirmative, apologized for the quality of the sword, and informed him that the guy was gone. The knight closed his eyes and asked if they knew where he was going. They answered in the negative. The guy said that now he understood everything, and since then they have not fulfilled a single order. Then the boy shouted at them and told them to come to their senses and cast the spells properly, and also to equip the knights with weapons. Otherwise, they would have nothing to fight with. The knights would indeed soon have nothing to fight with. They had hoped to leave all the work to Fake. They did not understand why he had not returned yet. At this point, the guy asked why they were standing there. Had he not expressed himself clearly? To which they replied that everything was crystal clear. They would start working immediately. All the forge employees looked at him with fear in their eyes. The knight said what he saw, that they understood, and then ordered them to contact him as soon as they found out where Fake was. After that, he left the forge. The others began to ask what they should do with so many swords, and not only with these, but more weapons were arriving every day. To which Morgan said that they should quickly get to work. The man thought that all this was happening because of a bad person. He shouted out loud that he needed to find a way to complete the work on time. At this time, the knight who left the forge was thinking that something was wrong with those court blacksmiths. He could feel it. At this point, another guy called out to him and said that something needed his attention, to which the guy asked what the matter was. He was told that it was a batch of swords that they had recently received. They haven't delivered any new weapons for some time. They've been trying to make do with what they have, but the enchantments are slowly breaking down. The new shipment solves the problem, but not entirely. To which he countered that the quality of the enchantments is very low. The knight said that he had to check the magic code, to which the blacksmith asked if he would be okay. Last time he felt very unwell after the check. To which the guy replied that this time he would be more careful. The blonde thought that his abilities were not enough to see the magic code of the spell cast by Fake. Trying to read a spell that was higher than his level caused significant discomfort in the body. Trying to read Fake's magic spells made him turn inside out several times. This means that his level is significantly higher than his. This time, the spell was cast by other people, but they are still the court blacksmiths. So, if you don't count Morgan, they are the best blacksmiths in the country. When the knight began to check, he became indignant and said that it all looked like childish scribbles, and that spells of this quality destroy the sword from the inside. The blonde turned to the blacksmith and asked if he had given these swords to anyone else. He replied in the negative and explained that he also thought they were terrible. The knight said that it was the right decision. It was impossible to work with these swords. The guy looked at the sword in his hands and thought that this nonsense would only ruin the sword, and then he would have to rewrite the entire magic code from scratch. The knight didn't expect those people to do their job so badly. They should be the best in the country. The blonde man turned to the blacksmith and asked if they had any quality swords left. He replied that there were a few, but not enough to complete the plan to clear the monsters. In that case, the priority would be given to new recruits who couldn't afford their own sword yet, and let them not overdo it with their use. He needed to talk to another blacksmith who had worked on his sword. The knight said that his name was Mr. Figure. He had once made his sword, a man with a difficult character. He doubted that he would agree, but at the moment he could only rely on him in this matter, so he would try. The blonde said that it was all because of those stupid Kuznetsovs. He would initiate an internal investigation later. In addition, he needed to find out where Fake was now. The royal court is a huge private sector. There are always shady deals and decisions made behind the scenes. New arrivals are treated quite harshly during their training. He has no doubt that there is more going on in the shadows than he can imagine. The supply of premium quality swords over the last couple of years. He wonders if they could all have been made by Fake. If this is so, then even for him, an ignorant person, his rare talent is obvious. How many more Kuznetsovs in the country could provide such an incredible ratio of quality and quantity? The knight said that Fake's departure would set the knight's progress back 50 years. His blacksmith asked him again at that moment. The blonde was thinking that those court blacksmiths and this Morgan, they were clearly hiding something. He knew it for sure. At this time, Fake stood by the window and watched the new arrival. He concluded that this was Robert. He was quite a stately man, and he was jealous. He couldn't do anything. He was wondering if he should greet him. Probably not, he was also a contender, so he might inadvertently provoke him. It would probably be best to spend the day in the workshop. After some time, the protagonist found himself face to face with Robert. Alicia was standing behind him. The girl apologized to him and said that Robert insisted on meeting him at least once. The latter said that he realized that he was Alicia's fiancé. The protagonist extended his hand and said that he was glad to meet him, after which he introduced himself. Robert said that he was mutually pleased to meet him. And then he introduced himself. Robert took Fake's hand in his and began to examine it carefully. The protagonist immediately asked what had happened, to which the guy replied that everything was fine. He just thought how beautiful his hands were. They were charmingly strong, the skin so dense and firm. After which Robert turned his gaze to Alicia and asked if she always hid behind someone else's shoulder. He also said that they had not seen each other for a very long time, and that time she also stood behind the maid's shoulder when they discussed books in the garden. He even felt somehow offended, to which the girl apologized to him. Robert looked at her carefully, then something dawned on him. He said that the girl had grown so much, to which she asked again if it was true. The guy turned to the main character and asked if he liked it here. The latter thought that this was some kind of sudden question. He immediately turned his gaze to the girl. Fake thought that this was very awkward. It seemed that Alicia was not used to such conversations either, but he could not let him guess about their fake relationship. Besides, he has no right to lose to this person, regardless of whether she loves him or not. The main character said out loud that he loves Alicia and is simply crazy about her. The girl looked at him in shock. At that moment, Robert addressed her by name and asked if she would allow him to speak to her alone. When they were alone, Robert saw the sword and asked if he could take a look. Fake answered positively. He thought to himself that he was appreciating his work. Robert was a talented blacksmith. The guy picked up the sword, touched its blade, and then asked if it was magic ore, and then added that it was a very good sword, to which the main character thanked him for it. The latter did say that he was forged from magical ore, to which Robert replied that everything was clear to him. The guy was pretty good, and the final spells were cast so skillfully. Robert put the sword back in its place, then said that sometimes he can blab all sorts of things. You shouldn't take it too seriously. Fake immediately asked what he meant. Robert approached the table, then picked up a knife and said that he was talking nonsense. He was not particularly gifted as a blacksmith, and he did not have much interest in it. His words surprised the main character very much. The guy continued and said that compared to other blacksmiths, he believes that he is somewhere in the middle. That is why he is here as an aristocrat. Robert said that Lady Alicia is a very attractive girl. Many men would like to see her as their bride. The guy said that she was beautiful, like a delicate flower. However, to his regret, she was growing up. The main character did not understand his words, after which he asked if he knew that she was only 18. But Robert did not listen to him. He said that in the past she was like that. He continued and said that she was so tiny, so small that it seemed like she would break in two if you hugged her. Fake didn't understand what he was talking about. To which the guy said that she had grown up. Indeed, Lady Alicia is a beautiful young lady. But that is not enough for him. He likes younger girls. Robert cried and said that if Alicia were 20 centimeters shorter and her breasts were smaller, it would be different. Her current appearance does not make him tremble at all. The protagonist listened to his speech and thought about what he was even talking about. Didn't her size perfectly reflect her sophistication? Then he stopped his thoughts in his mind. He asked Robert out loud what he was getting at, to which the latter replied that, in short, he no longer felt the same passion for her. The protagonist said what he understood, and then asked if that meant he was no longer interested, to which Robert replied that, frankly, that was true. The guy said that, first of all, he doesn't have unbridled ambitions and aristocratic title. He hopes to achieve more as an independent warrior and aims higher. It seems to him that the Barnasto family wants a blacksmith as a son-in-law, but he prefers monster hunting to blacksmithing. However, due to family circumstances, he needs to maintain the appearance of all this. His parents are very persistent. Robert ran up to the protagonist, grabbed him, and told him that he therefore wished him luck and expected him to keep their conversation a secret from the Barnasto family. Fake looked at him and then said that he understood, to which Robert said that it was wonderful. and then said that he liked one sword. The guy asked if it was possible to buy it, to which the main character answered positively. At that moment, Robert asked about its price. He thought that the sword was of higher quality than the one he had recently sold to Iwasu, and that there were more decorations on the hilt. He wondered out loud if 10,000 crowns would be enough. Robert answered yes. The main character thought that he asked for a rather high price, but the guy was an aristocrat. At that moment, he saw a box of inventory in his hands. Each such box can hold a certain number of items. It costs as much as the annual income of an ordinary person. Robert, at that moment, handed him the money and asked him to check, to which Fake replied that everything was correct. The guy asked him to remember his request. Perhaps in the future, he would bring him weapons, to which the main character said that in that case, he would wait for him. Robert said that they would then drop the formalities because he wanted to be friends with him. The protagonist wanted to argue with him at first, but then he saw Robert's face. The latter asked him to take care of him from now on. After some time, they returned to Alicia. She saw Fake's sword in his hands and asked if this was what he wanted, to which Robert responded positively and said that he needed to talk to him as well. The guy said that Fake seemed to be a very talented blacksmith, so he decided to buy the sword as a sample. He hoped not to lose touch in the future, to which the latter reciprocated. After this, Robert waved to them and told them that he was leaving, wished them all the best, and also informed them that he would visit Lady Alicia again. The main character exhaled and said that they seemed to have done well. The girl praised him and thanked him for today, to which he replied that she had done a great job too. He asked if there would be others besides Robert. She answered positively. Then he said that there would be many more such cases, and he thought that Robert turned out to be not bad. But who knows what will happen in the future? Alicia asked if she could check the goods too. The protagonist said that they would start with the highest quality items, 3 knives and 3 swords of Class D+. Robert had recently bought the same sword from him. Next in line are D-Class swords knives, also 3 each. Ibis took these from him. The knife has Class E. There are also goods of Class F. Now he has a good assortment within all classes. He plans to offer F-Class weapons to adventurers on a budget. It seems there are a lot of new faces on the market today. This time he has prepared some budget options. The Fake said that this time there is a lot of goods. Today he also plans to bargain with buyers. The most important thing now is to convince people to buy their goods. After that, he decided that today he had to give it his all. The girl encouraged him and said that the trading had begun. They were watching what was happening around them. The main character said that there were more people today, to which the girl replied that this was great, so they needed to speak louder. At that moment, one of the guys noticed their bench. Fake thought that in the morning, an F-Class knife and 1 sword were sold. This guy offered 12,000 crowns for them. He agreed to the offered amount, although of course he wanted to get 15,000 for them. But this guy was a much better bargainer than him. In fact, he sincerely wants to support and supply adventurers. If he manages to establish contact with them, it might turn out the same as with Ibis. He will consider it an investment in the future. At that moment, he heard a voice that said, "How many years? How many winters?" They immediately raised their heads and saw that it was the same merchant again. Fake said that he was glad to see him again. The latter asked how they were doing. The protagonist realized that this was the walking merchant. He hoped to meet him again. It was obvious that he was very happy. The merchant said that his sword was surprisingly good and very useful to him on his journey. It turned out to be much lighter and more durable than he expected, and also very easy to handle. The main character was flattered by these words and thanked him. The guy said that in addition, he has a very high magic transmission. It is hard to believe that the sword is made of E-Class ore. Fake was surprised by his words and said that since he liked the sword so much, he was very happy. To which the merchant said that magic even hardens the blade during use. An enchanted weapon is simply a miracle. The blonde guy said that he wanted to buy more today. The protagonist was surprised by his words, and the guy continued and asked if it would be okay if he took a little bit of everything. The merchant also said that one glance is enough to understand that the quality of this product is higher than last time. The guy said he liked these swords and knives, and then asked if he minded if he took a look. The Fake thought he was pointing to a D+. This guy clearly has a keen eye. After the merchant looked at all the goods, he chose some for himself. Then he thanked him and asked how much he owed. To which Fake said that there were 12 knives and swords in total. The merchant looked at all these items again, after which he said that he would take them all. The protagonist was surprised by his words. He thanked him out loud for his choice, then turned to Alice and asked her to pack everything, to which she responded positively. Fake said that regarding the price, he agreed. This time they would agree on 500,000 crowns. At the same time, they were both happy. He knew that it would be more difficult to bargain with him than with Robert. The traveling merchants were very skilled at this, and yet he got more than he expected, which was good. The merchant thanked him for his help, after which he said that he still hadn't introduced himself. His name was Rick. He then turned to the protagonist and said that there was a fake engraving on the handle. He asked if he minded if he used it. Fake replied that it was okay, to which the merchant said that he would be very much obliged to him, after which he thanked him again. The protagonist lowered his head and said that he was also grateful to him. After that, the guy said with a smile on his face that in that case he was leaving and they would see each other again. At that moment, Alicia said that Fake did it. He bought so much. Their dream came true. She is so happy, as she thought. He has an amazing weapon. To which the main character thanked her and said that her words gave him confidence. He laughed and said that he would continue in the same spirit. Unfortunately, all the goods are sold out. It must have been influenced by the variety of classes in the assortment. In the future, he will need to take this into account. After some time, they were returning home. Alicia said that they sold so much today, to which Fake said that it was all thanks to that peddler Rick, and it was also thanks to the girl. He thanked her for everything, to which Alicia said that they sold so much because he had a quality product. At that moment, he was called by name and told that they had not seen each other for a long time. As it turned out, it was Ibis and Beezer. They asked how they were doing. Fake greeted them. They asked them if they were heading home. Fake answered yes, and then Weather called him by name. The guy said that his sword was just wonderful. It was so easy to use, it exceeded all expectations. The protagonist said that he was glad to hear it. The guy thanked him again for such a good sword. At that moment, Iva said that he had a request. After that, he asked if the protagonist takes custom orders. The latter was shocked. Fake responded positively and asked if they were interested in anything specific. Iva said that the sword was very comfortable, but he needed a little shorter, and then asked if that was possible. The protagonist said that he understood, and thought to himself that he probably needed a dagger rather than a sword. Weather also said that he had a request. He wanted something longer and wider. Fake said it was possible, but he would need to know more to understand what exactly they didn't want. And custom orders would have a higher price. They could meet later and discuss all the details. To which their friends in turn said that they couldn't wait, but they agreed with his proposal. He thought that he would finally start making individual orders. He wanted to start as soon as possible. Ibis asked him when it would be convenient for him, to which Fake replied that any time. Then the guy suggested meeting tomorrow in front of the Adventurers Guild. He asked them if they would like to go on an adventures. At first they asked him about the offer, and then they agreed. Fake explained to them that he would need to see them both in action to understand what kind of sword they needed, and he'd have to go to a gun shop and find something similar so he could use it as a sample. But what the guys said about it being great, they agreed. After that, Ivas and Weser waved to them with happy smiles on their faces, and said that they would look forward to meeting them tomorrow. Alicia asked if they were going on an adventure together tomorrow. He asked if she wanted to join in. She said yes, and said she heard he could fight. Fake explained that before coming to court, he'd obtained all the materials himself. To which she replied that she wanted to see that too. He explained that it was too dangerous, but she replied that she had studied fencing and would not be a burden to them. The main character said that he understood everything. If something happens, he will protect her. She should be next to him tomorrow. Alicia blushed and asked him to say it again. He asked her why she needed it. The girl said that it was so nice to hear it, she asked him to repeat it again. To which Fake said that now it was awkward for him. And to himself, he thought about why she suddenly... The main character blushed, after which he said that she should be with him. He would protect her. The girl became even redder. Fake asked if it was awkward, and then he asked her if she would have said those words if he had asked her. To which she asked him what he wanted to hear. The protagonist thought to himself that he would like to hear that she likes him or something similar, but he stopped himself, because it was too straightforward. he said out loud that he wanted to hear the words that she wanted to be near him, to which Alicia asked if he really wanted to hear such words from her. He thought about whether it was too soon. He had put her in an awkward position. But out loud, he said that it was not the matter. In fact, he blurted it out without thinking. Alicia was immediately upset by his words. The main character continued to talk about what he asked her in response to that phrase. But the girl no longer listened to him. She turned around and walked away. He was surprised. The main character asked her why she was leaving and asked her to wait for him. The girl said that if he wanted her to say it, she would say it. Fake thought that at least she hadn't made him repeat that phrase again. That meant something. The protagonist found himself in Mr. Goral's office again. He reported that today's revenue was 512,000 crowns. The man immediately asked him about it again. Fake said that today he presented an assortment of weapons of different classes. Rick the peddler liked his goods, so he bought everything wholesale. The man said that he understood everything. If the peddler liked it, he believed that in the future he would buy even more. Fake said that it was all thanks to the wonderful working conditions created by Mr. Goral. The latter said that he was still on probation. He had not yet given any approvals. The man also said that he had heard something from Alicia, and then asked if it was true that they were going on an adventure tomorrow. The protagonist responded positively and explained that they would be joining adventurers who had made custom orders to see them in action. He intends to make a weapon that suits them perfectly. Every adventurer needs a sword that suits their fighting style. He would like to see it for himself so that he can fulfill the order most accurately. Goral said that he is so meticulous in his approach to work. To which the protagonist explained that he offers all efforts to ensure high quality of work. The man said that he would provide them with an escort, just in case the surveillance would take place from a distance. If something happened to Alicia, he would be in trouble. He also asked about his combat experience. Fake explained that before coming to court, he provided himself with materials, so he copes well with low-ranking monsters. Goral said that he was glad to hear it. The man also said that maybe one day he would test his powers, to which the main character agreed with him and said that if necessary, he would demonstrate. After some time, the guy found himself in his chambers. He thought that he hadn't had to fight for a long time, but he remembered the feeling. He was sure that everything would be fine. A new day has come. The protagonist and Alicia met their friends. The latter were very excited. They suggested that it was time to move on. Ivis turned to them and asked if they could perhaps drop the formalities from now on and communicate more neutrally. To which the protagonist replied that if they didn't mind. He also turned to Ivisu and asked him to address him more simply. To which the guy replied that he couldn't. It was too much for him. The protagonist asked about their plans for today. To which the guys explained that they had accepted a quest from the guild to hunt monsters in this forest. Fake immediately clarified that they really were hunting monsters right here. Ivis became more serious and said that there should be wolves and goblins here, as well as the leader of the wolves. Reijou said that if you go deeper, you can run into orcs. There won't be any stronger monsters in the area. To which Fake said that they aren't going to go deeper into the forest. The guy said that their goal today is to show their fighting style, so they ask you to watch them carefully. The main character said that he understood everything. The boys walked ahead, and Fake and Alicia were behind them. The latter put his hand to his chest and closed his eyes. She asked him if something was wrong, if something was hurting him. The main character said that everything was fine. He was just casting a spell on himself. The girl, shocked, asked him again if he was really casting a spell on himself. Fake explained that it is similar to the magic of strengthening. You can strengthen the body and track its condition. It is the same as tempering a blade, carefully and without harm to health. He thought to himself that this way he could protect the girl. He turned to her out loud and asked her that if something was wrong, she should tell him right away. She agreed. Ivis turned around and said that he saw that they were not wasting their time, and he was addressing Mr. Fike. The latter asked him not to tease, to which the guy replied that he didn't think so. They just looked so cute. After which he turned to the girl and asked if she could fight, to which she replied that only for self-defense. Ivis said that in that case, he thought he might need to protect the main character, to which she replied that it was possible. Then the guy said that she should press her shoulder to his. Ivis started talking about how after these actions their touches would develop into hot embraces. And then he didn't have time to finish his speech, because Weister stopped him. The latter told them not to pay attention to this person. Ivis asked why the beastmen were so strong. Fike told him not to worry. Everything was fine. A few moments later, Alicia tugged at his clothes and asked if she could find him near him, to which the protagonist responded positively and said that it was quite dangerous here. Fake hugged her to himself, after which he thought that his heart was about to jump out of his chest. He would definitely protect the girl. In the forest, you need to be especially vigilant. At that moment, Weather felt something, after which he stopped everyone and said that the wolves were approaching. The main character and the girl should stand behind them, after which he turned to his friend Ivasu and said that they needed to act. They immediately rushed towards the wolves that had appeared. Fake thought that it was so fast. Ivas at that moment dodged the wolf's attack. The latter was clearly angry, after which he again rushed towards the guy. At that moment, Ivas abruptly stepped aside, after which he swung his sword and, saying that he was the first to go, immediately killed the wolf. The remaining beasts stared in shock ahead. At that moment, Weather appeared behind them, saying that the second one was finished too, while swinging his sword. Then, shouting for the wolf to get what he wanted, he swung his sword and cut his body in two. He also dealt with the second opponent. After a few moments, Weezer said that it was over. He then turned to Ivas, who said that it was well done. Fake was shocked by what was happening. The protagonist thought to himself that he realized that while Ivas distracted the enemy, Weezer finished him off. That's what their tactics were. Ivas's speed, he moves very dexterously and dodges enemies. And Weser's strength. Beastmen are much stronger than normal humans, which gives him an advantage. Ivas asked the protagonist's opinion, to which he replied that it was excellent. He had thoughts about what kind of weapon he could make for them. He said that they were both strong. Their duet combined speed and strength. He didn't think there was a monster in this forest that could defeat them. Then he asked if he could try too. The guys were shocked and immediately asked him again about what he had said. After a while, they came to the place and hid in the bushes. There were monsters in a clearing in front of them. The protagonist asked if these were really two goblins, to which he was told that they had not yet been noticed. He replied that this was excellent, after which he picked up a small stone. Fake then swung his arm and threw the stone straight at the goblins. The throw was so powerful that one of them was instantly knocked down. The second one ran towards him with a club in his hand. The main character took out his sword and then struck him. In just a few moments, he figured it all out. Iva said that he was simply incredibly strong. To which the guy replied that he was exaggerating. He had previously collected materials on his own, so such battles were nothing new to him. Alicia blushed. She turned to the main character and said that he was just incredible. The guy blushed in response and thanked her. Iva said that it seemed that Lady Ali also enjoyed watching Fake. The latter changed the subject and asked them to show some more of their tactics, and then they would return to the workshop. He spent some time studying the fighting style. Considering Ivas's speed and agility, it would be best to make a light and short sword for him, but a long sword would suit Weezer. He is more comfortable handling a weighty weapon. Before Fake could begin work, he needed to know more about their wishes. They returned to the workshop, and he immediately asked Iwaz what he thought of the short sword, to which the latter replied that it was too long and also too heavy. Then the protagonist asked about his attitude to daggers, to which the guy replied that the length of the blade itself was too short, but the guy added that the weight was just perfect for him. To which Fake said that he seemed to understand that a shorter and lighter sword was needed. After this, the protagonist turned to Weezer and asked his opinion, to which he replied that the weight of this sword would definitely carry any enemy in its path. Fake approached them and thanked them for their time. Now he has a rough idea of what their ideal weapon should look like. Ivas thanked him in return and asked how much money the weapon would cost in the end. He thought about the fact that, given the custom order, the materials, he didn't want to downplay his work too much. But they were his first clients. The protagonist said that if the final weapon options suit them, he suggests doing it this way. Ivas's weapon will cost 40,000 crowns, and Wezer's weapon, 60,000. To which Wezer replied that it was even cheaper than he expected. Fake apologized and said that the thing is that this is the price taking into account that they will give him their old weapons to be melted down. In that case, the price will be added another 40,000 crowns. The guy said that he understood everything, and that it was not a pity to give away his old weapon for such a good discount. Fake said that they had agreed then by the beginning of the next auction, their weapons would be ready. He thanked them again for today, to which the guys thanked him in return and said that they were impatiently waiting for his creation. Fake said that everything is great, he will start from tomorrow. They wished him luck. He thanked them for it. A new day began. The protagonist was in the forge. He decided that he would start with a weapon for Ibis. His sword should be a cross between a dagger and a short sword, combining the weight of a dagger with the length of a sword. You will have to reduce the amount of magic ore when forging. But in this case, the weapon will not last long. Ibis and Visa are partners. They will have to survive many more battles together, which means the weapon must be very reliable. For such a result, he will have to try hard. First, he melted the ore, then forged an iron plate. When the mold was finished, he began to cast the spell. Don't overdo it with them. They are needed rather to correct the magic code. It can be broken by a hammer blow, but thanks to the charms, it will not be difficult to restore it. If this procedure is repeated several times, the magic code is more securely inlaid into the sword, similar to human muscles, which become stronger when used to the limit. After the shape was given, it was time to heat it. He immediately set fire to the resulting object. A few moments later, the burning was finished. The protagonist looked at his work and said that this was what was needed, after which he began sharpening. Usually he sharpens the products based on his personal feelings, but in this case, it is worth being especially meticulous. After the sharpening was finished, he began to shape the handles. After that, Fake went outside and decided to use the sword to see what it was like. It was sharper than he expected, and he hadn't even put any additional charms on it yet. And with them, it would become even sharper. He hopes that this sword will help Iwasu to pave the way to the top and keep his cheerful spirit. After some time, the sword was finally ready. Iwasa's sword turned out to be single-sided, somewhat similar to Falsio. Fake decided that one sharp side would be enough for his blade. Medium length shorter than a sword, it weighs a little more than a dagger, but lighter than a sword. This is exactly what Ibis wanted. Fake said that he was exhausted. All that was left was to make the knives and, consider, half of the work was done. He didn't think that one order could be so exhausting. This is the first sword made to order. He hopes that Ibis will be pleased. At that moment, there was a knock on the door and Alicia asked if she could come in. He answered positively. The girl said that she could see that he was working hard, and then asked if he had already finished part of the order, to which Fake replied that he decided to start with a weapon for Iwas, and then asked if she wanted to take a look. She said that this sword combines power and elegance from the magic. Alicia said that it was like a real work of art, to which he thanked her and said that it was not in vain that he tried. That sword alone had exhausted him. She said that she was worried, so she came to see him. The protagonist asked how long it took. He thought to himself that he had started working in the morning, and forging the sword took what felt like 5 hours. At this point, Alicia asked him if he wanted something to eat. He said no, then said he really wanted to sleep. She then sat down on the floor, then patted her knees. The girl said that since he was tired, he should lie down on her lap. He became embarrassed and tried to argue with her, but she said that he was tired, so he should lie down. The main character obeyed her, after which he lay down with his head on her lap. He thought that it was so soft, and in general, how can he rest here? Because he was worried and could not really relax. Alicia asked him what his plans were for the day, to which Fake said that he was thinking of making a couple of items for sale and finishing for today, and tomorrow he would start on Reeser's order. She suggested that they lie down for a bit longer. The main character thought that he was doing something that could protect people important to him. He was resting on the lap of his beloved, and he was the happiest person in this world. A new day had arrived. Fake thought that unlike Ivis's sword, Vizer's sword would require a large amount of magic ore. That's why the sword will cost more. First, he created a mold using earth magic to create a wide plate. He placed molten magic ore in it and let it harden. After this, the plate needs to be heated again, as in the case of the Iwasa sword. All the same manipulations need to be repeated. He uses a hammer to give it the desired shape, then raises the temperature again, and he repeats this procedure several times. He wondered if he should enchant the sword. Then he thought about deciding what to do with the final form. Weezer, unlike Iwaz, wields any type of blade. The protagonist thought that for this reason, he wanted to create a double-sided blade for him. In this case, a long and wide sword would be suitable, as Weezer wanted. His sword should not just infect, but defeat enemies. In their duet, Ivis draws attention to himself, and Weezer instantly finishes off. Therefore, the sword must be heavy enough, sharp enough to kill with one blow. he decided that it was necessary to introduce magical information, then forge. By repeating this process of tempering the steel, the sword could be brought to perfection. Iria's magic iron, so it can be made even better. And yet it is not easy to forge such a huge thing. If he had not cast a spell on himself, it would have been very difficult. Eventually, Fake was able to achieve the desired shape and weight for Weser's sword. Then he realized that it was already noon as he thought, this sword would take much longer to work on than I was's. He should rest. After a rest, he decided to continue. Working until the evening, he finally finished. He looked very tired. The sword turned out to be incredibly heavy. It was not easy to temper it. Since it is a long sword, sharpening wind magic takes more strength than usual. The protagonist thought that the job was much more difficult than he had expected. Still, he should have set a higher price. After that, it was time for the last pass before the final enchantment. It went outside again to try the sword in action. Fake thought that with this sword you can kill monsters with one blow. Thanks to the double-sided sharpening of the blade, you can cut through anything, just relying on its enormous weight. It was time for the final touch. He needed to find the right charms that would unlock Weser's potential in combat. It was all over. He spent a whole day in the workshop before the sword was ready. He immediately fell to the floor and said that it had finally happened. After that, the main character wondered if the guys would like the new weapon. He couldn't wait to hand them the swords. At that time, Alicia tried to lift Weser's sword. The girl said that it was heavy and impossible to lift, to which he replied that he had made the sword based on Weser's build and wishes. Then he asked her to stretch out her hand to him. Fake said that he had temporarily enhanced her physical abilities. Now she would be able to lift the sword, after which he suggested that she try. She really did it. Alicia said that it was really heavy. There are only 2 people in the world who can create something like this using magic ore. Fake asked if it was true. He didn't think so. To which she replied that she had met many blacksmiths, but only a few had the ability to create something like that. Alicia smiled at him and told him that he was an incredible blacksmith. The protagonist thanked her for this, but said that he still had room to grow. The girl said that he had worked in the workshop for 2 days without stopping, and then asked if they would go to dinner. To which he answered positively and explained that he was terribly hungry. She said that he could eat as much as he wanted. At this time, the knight returned to the forge to Morgan. He asked about what their forge does in general, to which the man asked again what he meant. The guy said that the reason he called him was because of the sword that was entrusted to him. He asked why the work was done so poorly. Morgan was immediately surprised. He thought to himself whether there really was any problem with such a superb enchanted weapon. The man said that every knight in his guild received an enchanted blade. The forge works almost around the clock, which requires incredible effort. Morgan explained that their forge was already working without rest. This art requires huge investments, strength, energy, and endurance. He asked about whether it might be worth telling the knights to treat their swords more carefully. Then, the knight asked about whether it wasn't their forge that had offered to supply new weapons regularly once a month. This agreement had been made about 3 years ago. Morgan thought that was right. That was it. When Fake arrived at their palace and had already settled in, he shifted all the responsibilities to him alone. They discussed it all, wanted to make him suffer more, so they made adjustments to the supply system and brought it to what it is now. But the boy dealt with these difficulties, which made the man incredibly angry. That's why he agreed with the knights on a regular supply of weapons. The knight said that before this, the supply was carried out once every 6 months or 3 months. The blonde said that if they continued to make swords of such disgusting quality, they will refuse the services of their forge. Morgan was shocked by his words. He did not like the word disgusting. The man asked what shit meant, to which the knight explained that the sword he was working on was in no way comparable to the one Fake had inlaid. So the knight thought that if all those high-quality swords they had supplied before, every single one of them was Fake's work. The blonde said that none of their swords can be used. They need to fix the charms on each of them. Morgan said that they are already working even on holidays. They don't have time. Maybe they want to increase their salary. The knight said that if they continue to supply weapons of this quality, they will have to think about lowering their salaries. They brought swords that still have the Fika charm on them, so they can be used as a sample. Morgan asked if it was really Fake's charm. He couldn't even look at such low-quality work. The knight was immediately surprised by his words. The blonde said that even he, a man without the ability to see the magic code, could see it. He thought about how this man dared to talk to him like that. Who did he think he was? Morgan spread his arms out to the side, sighed heavily, and then turned to the captain of the knights and said that it seemed he didn't know. The man said that he, unlike him, does not have the ability to see the magic code. This means that he cannot distinguish a crudely made code from a good one. Morgan started talking about how, in other words, Fake's spell was so terrible that it couldn't even be fixed. The man continued to say that there was no spell worse than these. No blacksmith could even look at them. And if he tried, he would immediately experience an unimaginable disgust, such that none of them would be able to continue working. Morgan thought about the terrible thing that happened about a year after Fake became a blacksmith. He told the latter that he had no talent. The guy apologized to him and said that he was not used to it yet. The man shouted at him and said that from now on he would sit in the workshop every day and enchant all the swords alone. Morgan thought that since then he had not looked at it and did not want to look. At this point, the knight asked if it was really any of them. He confirmed his words. Then the blonde said if he was really trying to say that every blacksmith got into their workshop only through a connection and was practically useless. Morgan thought that it was true. Everyone, including him, became blacksmiths at court only because of connections. However, even so, they have abilities. You can't put them on the same level as ordinary people. The knight said that in that case it was enough. He asked him to at least enchant the swords so that they could be used. The blonde said that he was finished. The man could go. Morgan, when he left his office, thought that he was a bad person. All he did was make one-sided demands. He had never met such a reckless person, even though they worked tirelessly. He thought that this country was doomed. If he had become this man's personal blacksmith, his life would have been over. Thank God that didn't happen. He was tired today. He would leave today's work to others, and he would rest a little. After some time, the knight gathered all the blacksmiths in one room. He told them that they were all untalented. Morgan exchanged glances with the other blacksmiths, then asked what the guy meant. They were actually court blacksmiths. He thought about how the blonde couldn't see clearly and dared to say such a thing. The knight said that if they could demonstrate the results, he wouldn't report the situation to another department. Initially, he wanted Fake to check his sword, but he couldn't even imagine that they would return this parody of a weapon to him. They had enough impudence, and he called them bad people. He doused them with power, so some of the Kuznetsovs fell to the floor. The knight said that as soon as he began to sort things out, more and more of their misdeeds came to light. It seems that in addition to Fake, many Kuznets have left here, and none of them worked there for more than a year. The fact that specialists are fleeing here so quickly is all Morgan's fault. The latter said that they do have staff turnover, but it is all because today's youth lack courage. The knight said that this was all untrue. According to his information, the head of the workshop was mocking his new subordinates. After which he flew up to Morgan and grabbed him by the collar. The blonde said that he was talking about him. To which the man explained that he was not making fun of anyone, he was training. He was just training them. Then the knight began to talk about how Fake didn't even have a day off. He had to spend the night in the forge. He asked about where the training was, after which he added that the man had more talent as a torturer than as a blacksmith. Morgan started denying everything and saying that it wasn't so. This made the knight even more angry. He told him to shut up, then waved his hand. The blonde man punched him, causing him to fall to the ground. Morgan then asked him if he thought violence was acceptable. The knight asked how many valuable blacksmiths they had lost because of him. Compared to that, his pain was nothing. The blonde said that the man was obliged to return Fake, and not just him. He would call back all the Kuznetsovs that they had lost. Each of the current blacksmiths will crawl on their knees and apologize to those who left because of them. The knight even offered several options for an apology, after which he asked if he understood. From the whole conversation, Morgan heard that he was fired. He immediately asked if it was true, to which the knight shouted that it was obvious. Morgan said that he would not kneel before them, to which the blonde said that if they could not return them, then they would all be fired. He had already told the man's family about this situation in detail. The knight added that it seemed they had decided to distract themselves from him. Morgan couldn't believe it. He thought that he was no longer the court blacksmith, and if he was stripped of his titles, there would be no point in living anymore. The blonde said that if they succeed and bring back all the blacksmiths, he would allow them to join the Knight Corps. Of course, they would have to endure harsh training. The knight said that for now they would leave this issue. Now he must go collect Kuznetsov. The man thought about why this was happening to him at this time at the market. The main character handed the guys swords and said that they were ready, then asked their opinion. To which Iva said that the length is ideal. The sword is very light and compact. But even so, he feels great power in it. The protagonist said that it was adjusted according to his fighting style, so it is not very suitable for frontal attacks. Fake added that nevertheless, he wanted to make it as durable as possible, and yet the blade might not survive a direct clash with a strong opponent like Weiser, so he had to be more careful. Iva said that he understood everything, after which he thanked him and said that if he fought as usual, then there should be no problems. Weather also picked up the sword. The protagonist thought that it was amazing that he was holding such a weight with only one hand. He asked him out loud how he was. The beastman said that the weight was exactly what he wanted. Fike said that he was glad to hear it, and then asked him about the length, to which the guy replied that everything was fine with that too. Weser said that it was so perfect that he couldn't even believe it. Everything was exactly as he wanted it to be. For the first time, he saw a sword that fits his hand so well. Fake said that he emphasizes one decisive blow. Their fighting style complements each other. Iva's lures the enemy, and Weiser destroys him. The latter agreed with him and said that he will appreciate this sword. The main character said that there is no need to worry. He can use it as much as he wants. If it breaks, he will simply bring it to him. This is the main joy of the blacksmith. After that, he said that it was time for the settlement, the amount they had agreed on, and this sword. He reminded them and said that the deal was done. It was a pleasure to deal with them. The sword received as part of the payment is in good condition. It only needs a little adjustment of the magic code, and it can be used. He will be able to sell it. The guys said that they are planning to take the promotion exam soon. With such clinics, they will definitely not have problems. Although, even without this, with such swords, they will definitely pass. It seems to them that they have been using these swords for years. Fake said that he was glad to hear it. In any case, they should be careful and take care of themselves. If they failed the test with his weapon, then he would start to doubt his blacksmithing abilities. The guy said that they would definitely pass. Weiser said that he would become a swordsman worthy of this sword. His comrade immediately supported him. After that, they said goodbye and left. Alicia said that everything worked out. They were very pleased. The main character agreed with her and said that he was glad that they liked the swords. The girl happily said that she hoped they would pass. They would definitely cope. She also added that, after all, they had his weapon. After some time, the main character said that everything was fine. The enchantment was over. She said that all the swords looked great. At that moment, a girl approached the counter. They turned to her and said that if she wanted, she could try any of the swords. To which she pointed her finger and said that she would like to support him. They watched her silently. The girl asked about the price, to which Fake replied that the sword would cost 50,000 crowns. Then she asked if it could be cheaper. The main character immediately thought about it. He thought to himself that he could perhaps give it to her for 40,000. At that time, she came closer and said that she could do him some favor. Fake said that he couldn't lower the price much, but maybe he could do it to 40. At that moment, Alice said that his price was only 50,000 crowns. The girl said that, first of all, this sword is of quite high quality. Even at the original price, it is quite a good deal. The stranger turned to Alice and asked if she was really a girl, to which the latter answered positively and asked what was going on. But she simply answered that everything was clear to her. The client said that she understood everything. She would buy the sword for 50,000 crowns. The protagonist thanked her for the purchase. After that, the girl left. It was clear that Alicia was angry. Fake asked her what happened, to which she asked if he really liked big shapes. He said nothing of the sort, but she said he was staring. The guy was thinking that it wasn't that he liked big ones so much, it was just male nature, and he accidentally glanced. After that, they sold 2 F-rank swords and daggers to the new adventurers. The income for the morning was 188,000 crowns. They decided that they would continue in the same spirit. After some time, a street vendor Rick came up to their counter and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The guy said that his swords and daggers were sold like hot cakes in the neighboring city. He advertised them well, so a new stream would soon arrive. The protagonist asked if it was true, then said it was great and thanked for the advertisement. The merchant said that not only adventurers bought them, even knights took them. The guy also said that they started bragging to other knights and then asked if it was great. The protagonist asked about the fact that knights do not receive weapons from the kingdom or their lords. He thought to himself that in his country, the Revenant Empire, everything was exactly like that. It was for this reason that they had to perform mass enchantments of weapons on a weekly basis. The merchant said that he was right, but it cannot be said that the weapons he gave out were of good quality. Knights who have reached a certain status usually acquire personal weapons. That's why he's here again. He asked how many of these high-end weapons they had. Fike replied that they had 10 of those, swords and daggers. The merchant said that this is excellent quality, he takes everything. The fake thanked him for the purchase. The blonde has already asked how much it will cost him, to which he was told 800,000. Then the merchant said that he buys wholesale, after which he asked if he could give a discount and offered 700,000. The main character said that the price would still be too low, and it would have a bad effect on his business. The fake suggested the following option. He would add slightly lower quality swords and daggers, and that it would be 760,000. The merchant agreed to his proposal, after which the weapon was packed in a wooden box. The merchant said that he was leaving soon and for a long time, so he would not be able to come to him. The main character said that it was sad to hear. Then the blonde said that his student would visit him in a week instead of him. He explained that it would be a girl named Almay, and he would have a request for him. Could he prepare several weapons of varying quality? He would even buy the one she did not choose. The merchant said that he wanted to check if she could correctly assess the quality of the weapon in front of her. The protagonist said that he understood everything and would do so. The blonde said that by that day he should have for sale 10 swords and daggers of the highest quality and a couple of goods of lower quality, after which he asked if he could prepare it. The protagonist responded positively and said that he would prepare everything for her arrival. The merchant said that this was great. The servant would come with her, so he would recognize her right away. Alicia whispered to him and asked if he was sure, since he had to get everything done in a week. The protagonist said that he was already used to it, so he would manage in a week. She asked him not to overwork himself. The merchant asked how much this magnificence would cost him. The fake offered him a price of 1,500,000, to which the merchant offered to reduce it to 1,300,000. The main character, shocked, asked again if he was serious. At that moment, Alicia also joined the conversation and said that it wouldn't work, that the price was too low. They said that they agreed to at least 1,450,000. The protagonist supported her. Then the merchant said that so be it. He was ready to pay 1,400,000. Fake thought that it was at least 1,400,000, but the girl told him not to even dare, after which she insistently said that their price was 1,450,000, since they also agreed to help them in training the student. The merchant said that she was right. Everything would be as they wanted. He would pay this amount. The protagonist said that he was grateful to him. They would not expect his student by the appointed time. After he left, Fake turned to Alicia and thanked her. She responded that he was, as always, giving discounts too easily. He responded that he was just glad that his swords were actually needed. The girl said that she understood his feelings, but his blades were something truly valuable to her. Let the payment correspond to the skill. The main character was embarrassed by her words, after which he said that it was good. He would try not to repeat the same mistake in the future. Alicia immediately asked about the apprentice, to which Fake explained that blacksmiths also teach apprentices and working together is a common thing for them. The girl asked him if he really wanted a girl as a student, to which he immediately asked, why a girl? He replied that he was lucky to have the magic of all attributes, so he does all the work of the workshop himself. An apprentice is needed to divide the duties. This is especially convenient in those moments when you have to work with a large batch of orders. The protagonist grabbed the girl by the hands and excitedly said that he had an idea and asked why she shouldn't become his student. The young man had already begun to imagine how he would forge with Alicia and how much fun they would have. And in addition, he would see a girl in a work uniform. The guy asked the girl what she thought about this idea, to which she became embarrassed and closed her eyes. Alicia apologized to the boy and told Fake that she was not as good at magic as he was. The protagonist crossed his arms and said that she was right, adding that he thought that since she could see magical objects, she could learn blacksmithing. But everything was much more complicated. The girl was upset and thought that if she could, she would agree without hesitation. Alicia's thoughts were filled with anxiety that if Fake took someone else as an apprentice, then they would spend time together in the workshop every day. The girl screamed and the boy called out to her asking what happened. Alicia began to shake and asked the young man not to take girls as students, to which he replied that he understood her. Alicia decided to ask the boy where he learned blacksmithing, and the young man began to remember. Fake said that he was from a village and his parents were blacksmiths, and having picked him up from the street, they taught him everything they knew. The boy looked at his hand and thought that they were no longer in this world. The girl asked him what it meant to be picked up. The boy answered that when he was little, his biological parents abandoned him, and he was an orphan. Alicia was upset, and Fake, noticing this, asked not to bother his head with this because he was too small and did not remember the faces of those people. The girl looked at the guy and smilingly replied that she was lucky today, and she learned a little more about the guy. The young man smiled at such warm words. The girl happily declared that they were very lucky today and were able to sell everything. The guy agreed with her and replied that it was not for nothing that they left the shop open for so long. The conversation was interrupted by the adventurers calling out to the main character and waving their hands at him in greeting. The Fake smiled and asked his friends if they had passed the exam, to which they agreed, and the guy praised them, asking what the results were. And the interests happily said that they passed the exam and were promoted to rank D, thanking the young man for his weapon. Fake and Alicia looked at each other, and the guy said he was glad to help and congratulated them on their rank increase. And he told you that he can't imagine how grateful they are to him, because his weapon is light and easy to use, and now they are closer to rank C. The main character smiled and said that it was not only about the weapon, because they had received it not so long ago, but they were able to master it very quickly, and thanks to their abilities, they were able to pass the exam. They wanted to interrupt the guy by refusing, but he said that if they needed a weapon again, they could safely turn to him. Fake added that by that time, he will try to get better magic steel. I think that the current magic metal will be weak for their skill. The adventurers said that they would continue to recommend them to their friends, to which the young man thanked them and wished them good luck. The heroes waved to each other again, wishing to see each other soon. The protagonist watched the trail and thought that the people who received the weapon he made with his own hands right in front of him were rising to the top, which made him proud of them. The young man replied that he would not be inferior to them in height, for which Alicia supported him. Already at the estate, the main character submitted a report saying that the total profit was 1 and 2 million crowns. The man asked about the individual order from the merchant, to which the guy agreed. The young man replied that, in addition to this, the shop was visited by adventurers and little by little the products were becoming recognizable. The man asked if the guy was doing well, to which he responded in agreement. The owner of the estate sadly replied that there was no doubt about his skill. The man fell silent, and the guy, seeing this, asked what happened. The Duke refused, saying that the boy had received a letter and handed him an envelope. The protagonist took the envelope and absent-mindedly asked if it was from Laveverta. The man replied that he had also received a letter from him, which spoke of an order from a blacksmith and that the guy was surprised. The Duke asked if he would accept the letter, to which the young man agreed and added that if it was an order for forging, he would gladly undertake it. The man added that if so, he would write a reply to the letter right away. The main character thanked the man and promised that he would not let him down. Walking to his room, the guy doubted, because the order was from Levert. The young man understood, while he was remembering the customer, that it would be difficult to please him. The next morning, the guy saw the guest and Levert greeted Fake with hugs. Levert was getting the guy, saying that he was glad that the young man took it upon himself to order it, while Fake himself was thinking only about personal space. The guy asked his guest what kind of weapon he wanted. The customer took a small chest in his hands and opened it with the help of magic, took out a handkerchief and asked the guy to look at it. The protagonist saw the metal and asked with delight if it was the magical iron of the Iria. The man agreed and said that was why he approached him. The young man thought about the magical iron that could be extracted from the bodies of monsters, but not necessarily from strong monsters. It would be possible to extract something of value, because everything depended on luck, and the iron could fall out of the carcass of an ordinary goblin. Continuing to think about the fact that adventurers go out hunting day after day hoping for luck precisely because of this, Luetra asked if it was not wonderful to agree to something and asked about the second magical material, Virea. The customer replied that he was inferior to the Iria, but for a blacksmith it was still a rare chance to demonstrate his blacksmithing skills on such metal, to which the young man agreed. The protagonist thought that iria is almost never found on sale and swords made from it are family heirlooms that are treasured. But the guy's thoughts were interrupted by the customer, who said that this was not all that he had prepared for him. The guy opened the chest, and the main character saw something incredible. The chest contained the dragon's own claw and fang. The customer agreed and said that he had entered their property and they had destroyed him, and from his body they had taken the iria, claws, and fangs. Levert added that this is why he approached the guy for the order. The protagonist replied that it is not every day that person is able to defeat a dragon, and asked whether he did it alone. The customer refused, saying that it was impossible to defeat him alone, and added that the knights helped him and only through their combined efforts did he manage to destroy him. The protagonist replied that he ended up getting something out of this victory, and it was just incredible. The young man said that creating a weapon from such rare materials was the best reward for a blacksmith. The customer smiled, and I replied that I was glad that the blacksmith was so inspired. Kuznets suggested using iria as a basis and filling the missing volume with firea. The young man thought that it was not easy to bring firea, and that there was not enough iria to make weapons. The protagonist asked if that was why he also provided the material of the dragon itself, to which the customer agreed and replied that, according to his idea, the fang and the kolk should make up for the lack of material and improve the quality of the product. The protagonist agreed, but added that even so, the result would be worse than that of a pure alloy, and whether he was ready to make a sword from what was available. Levert sighed in frustration and replied that he understood and that he would have to compromise since it was inevitable. The customer laid his hand on the blacksmith and replied that he had high hopes for his skills. The young man replied that he would not let him down. Looking at the materials, the boy thought that perhaps this was the fate of all blacksmiths. The protagonist was delighted to see so many rare materials and felt a pleasant anticipation because he could not wait to get to work. The blacksmith asked what kind of weapon he wanted him to forge. Levert took out a knife and a sword and presented it to the main character. When handing over the sword, he asked that it be of the same shape as this one. Fake took the sword out of its sheath and began to look. They say that the sword combines Vaiura and Saira material. The young man began to say that the blade was forged carefully and enchanted to the highest degree. The customer added that he was right, and this time he wanted the boy to use materials from the dragon and the iron metal to create an even more perfect blade. The main character looked at the sword and asked if he could cast an anakara on it, to which the customer replied that if the blade became better than the current one, he would not be against it and trusted his instincts. Levert added that the weight, length, and shape should be as he feels. The protagonist understood him and replied that he would try to make a sword that would meet the customer's expectations. The customer sat down on a chair and began to watch the work, while the blacksmith himself began to melt and mix the two types of metal. After that, the main character acts according to the standard scheme, and there was nothing complicated. The bowl produced perfectly fused metal. Here the main character realized that difficulties awaited him ahead, because the dragon's fang and kokat also needed to be melted and mixed correctly. The young man took the fang and claw in his hands and felt a barely noticeable warmth, as if a heart was beating in them. This was a very strange sensation for him. The customer continued to watch silently while the guy studied the materials. The guy put the claw and fang in the bowl and realized that they were in no way susceptible to fire, because dragons are really resistant to high temperatures. The young man realized that he would have to fine-tune the magical flow and raise the heat to the required level. With the help of magic, the guy was finally able to change shape, and the claw and fang began to melt. Levert was very surprised, saying that he didn't expect him to figure it out so quickly. The customer continued to say that he didn't expect anything less from him, because usually blacksmiths don't even take on dragon materials. Because only specialists do this, and you are able to adapt to them, and only a true master is capable of such a thing. The guy continued to melt the materials, and replied that they were now completely fused. The guy took a bowl of molten metal and wanted to mix it with dragon raw materials. The main character poured the metal and began to mix. The young man exhaled and reported that the synthesis of the magical properties of all materials had been completed successfully. The customer was surprised and replied that it was a great job, to which the guy thanked him and replied that he would now give it shape. But it was still far from finished and asked if he would continue to watch. The customer agreed. They say that you don't learn from such a master every day, and asked to be present until the very end, because it was an invaluable experience. The guy agreed and nodded and began to continue his work. He began to shape it with a hammer and forged it using a standard algorithm and monitored the magical indicators. Despite the compression of the magical metal and the dragon components, their essences are not yet synchronized, and the external integrity is deceptive inside. They have not yet merged into one. While the guy was giving shape to the sword, and thanks to this, he wove the magical streams together. When the alloy becomes whole, he deliberately destroyed its structure in order to create it anew, and only in this way does steel become stronger. The young man continued to forge diligently. The customer also silently watched what was happening while the guy was working. This work took the whole day, and the continuation had to be postponed until the morning. The next morning, the customer, who had already spent the night there, stood at the anvil to begin work. The final shaping of the blade had already been completed, but before sharpening it still needed to be tested. For a double-edged sword, the balance symmetry was critical, and the guy looked to see if everything was perfect. The next step was to make a handle from air metal. The main character made a handle and attached it to the sword. The main character approached the customer with a new sword and asked if he wanted to try it out before the final modifications. Levert took the sword and looked at it before swinging it. The guy continued to swing the sword and test it in motion. Having stopped, the customer turned to the blacksmith and smiled. The main character asked how he liked the sword, to which he replied that it was simply beautiful, and although it was an exact copy of the original sword, it was flawless to rise from one forging. Fake was happy about this, and said that then they should move on to the final processing. The customer noted that the level of the guy's wind magic was impressive, and apparently it was the mastery of all the elements that was impressive to achieve such mastery in forging. The blacksmith replied that he had not wasted his years of training in vain. The protagonist replied that the sharpening was finished, and now it was time to move on to the final charms. Fake thought that the charms would basically repeat those that were on Levered's sword and modify it for the magical metal Iria. The blacksmith continued to disappoint with a smile, and the customer continued to silently watch. The sword was ready and Flevert swung it again. The customer began to say that it not only fits perfectly in the hand and the transmission of magic is expressively effective, and the quality and precision of the spells are beyond praise. The guy was glad that Levert appreciated the sword. The customer added that he would not be able to repair the sword itself if it broke, and the blacksmith replied that due to the fact that the alloy contained the metal Iria, everything would be fine for 2 months. The customer grabbed the blacksmith's hand and replied that his hands worked real miracles. The protagonist asked to stop this by taking his hand back. The customer thanked the blacksmith and asked to proceed to payment. Levert offered a fee of 5 million brackets, which the protagonist refused and said that it was too much. The young man replied that he himself had provided him with all the materials, and that he had been immediately oriented on the shape of the sword, and that he could take 300,000 crowns for his services. Levert replied that he had specifically studied all the nuances, and that few people were able to process such material, so he included payment for unique skills here. Weapons made of iron metal cost 10 times more. The customer asked to take the chest. They say that the entire amount is in the box with the items. The protagonist replied that these were the rarest artifacts that only occasionally appeared in dungeons, and he could not simply accept such value. But the customer insisted, saying that the blade was worth it. The customer added that a sword made from Iria material can even compete with weapons made from Easley steel. Levert added that he wanted to continue working with him as a blacksmith, and that it would be useful to him and should serve him in the future. The protagonist agreed and thanked the guy. The customer again thanked the blacksmith for what he had created and vowed to become a warrior worthy of him. The girl told the fake that the skill was truly great, because the sword given to Levatra met all her expectations in processing the Irium metal and dragon components was already a feat. Alicia happily replied that even her father was amazed, and she was sure that he would soon appreciate his skill. Fake asked if it was true, to which he agreed, and said that he hoped one day it would be so, but thought that it would be if he really recognized him. The main character did not understand what exactly would change in their relationship because he was just a difficult groom and a shield from other suitors. The young man thinks that if this continues forever, although if he can continue to be useful to Alice, he will only be glad. The boy didn't understand how long they could deceive Ward Gorel. The young man thought that eventually, when she found someone who would truly love her, his role would come to an end. The main character understood that it all started with her pity because kind Alice felt sorry for him, who everyone was making fun of. The young man forgot about it and began to try so desperately in blacksmithing to live recognition. Well, it was childish. The girl noticed the guy's mood and asked if everything was okay and if he was tired from forging the sword, to which he smiled sadly and replied that everything was fine. The main character said that next week a student Riga Almei would come to him, and there were still a couple of orders from other clients, but he hadn't even sat down to work. The girl was outraged. They say that he had already spent a lot of time and effort on the last order. The boy replied that it was his hobby, which brought him income, so he was not complaining. Alicia called out to the boy. They say that she asked him to rest more, but the boy said that he was not tired. The girl added that she was worried about him and asked him to rest this week. The young man replied that they could try it for a change, since there was no hurry, and suggested going somewhere together and eating something tasty, to which the girl agreed. The guy did not understand what was waiting ahead. The protagonist thought that he would not be able to curb his thirst for forging truly worthy blades, and he wanted his swords to find many owners. This was his meaning of existence, and it is unshakable. He is simply fulfilling the duty of a blacksmith. As his heart led him, the owner of the house stood in his office and thought about the customer, who thanked him for permission to order fake weapons from Fake. Levert told him that the magical iron of the air, the magical metal of the Virea claw, and the fang of the dragon were able to combine in one blade. This is the result that all his expectations came true. The Duke was confused and asked if such a blade could be forged. The man asked if he could inquire about what he had received consent for, and asked why it was necessary to order a fake, since they are both presidents on his daughter's hand and are blacksmiths. The guy replied that Lady Alicia had highly praised his talent, and as a fellow craftsman he wanted to test what he was really capable of. The young man added that for him, processing and shaping such materials is not an easy task. The Duke added that, as a blacksmith, he was amazed by his skill, and it was not for nothing that Alicia singled him out from the others. The man came back from his thoughts about past conversations and turned around. There was a large chest in the room. Coral walked over to the chest and opened it, looking at the sword. The man looked at him and thought. Coral believed that he was the one who could fix it. Alicia told Leafy that Fake was always sitting in the forge preparing for the market, and they never spent any time together. The maid suggested watching the guy work. The girl replied that she would then disturb him, and when he was focused, he would not pay attention to her at all. Maid, I replied that I understood her, and asked to rely on her. The girl knocked on the door of the protagonist's workshop and asked to let her in. The protagonist agreed, and the girl replied that the worst thing had happened to the lady. The guy perked up and asked what had happened. The girl replied that Alicia really wanted to have tea with sweets with him and begged him to take a short break, to which he immediately stopped working and went to Alicia. After a 2-week break, the heroes opened the tent again, took their usual places, and prepared everything for work. The couple, as usual, divided all the goods by quality and added a batch for Almi, Rig's student. At the request of the merchant, the protagonist forged several weapons of different quality, which increased the number of swords and daggers to attract customers. Alicia told the boy that the box given to him by Levert came in handy, and thanks to it, the young man was able to carry a lot more things. People were walking, but suddenly the voice of adventurers was heard from the crowd about the shop, and the guys approached the heroes. The boys asked if this was the shop of the blacksmith Feek, to which consent was sent, and the adventurer began to tell that he bought a sword from him through a traveling merchant. The young man continued to say that that is why he came personally and even let his guys try the sword, which made everyone eager to get the same one, because the quality is excellent and fits in the hand like a glove. The main character was delighted and thanked for the praise. The Fake thought that the traveling merchant was Rig, who promised to advertise his products, but the guy himself did not expect that customers would come to him immediately. The adventurers chose their weapons and asked to sell them daggers and swords. The main character thanked for the purchase and named the price. The Fake sold the weapon at a discount, but even so, the order brought in 200,000 gold, and immediately there were 3 buyers from the very morning, and that was luck. After a while, new clients appeared. Someone brought their friends, which made the protagonist thank those who praised his blades in taverns. Some people came because of rumors about Ibis's strength. Others found out everything from the merchants, and by midday, the shop was full of people. The girl said that it was incredible because today there was no end to the buyers. The guy agreed with her and said that he thanked Riga for such advertising and fame. The girl said that this was right and his student should hurry because they would soon run out of blades. The main character thought that the number of people had clearly increased compared to the last time, and even if not everyone was buying but just looking, this was already an excellent sign. The man with the mustache asked the main character to buy 2 daggers and the sword, to which Alicia thanked him for the purchase, and ours began to think how not to sell everything, to which the girl replied that fewer people began to look in on them, and turning around, they saw those they were waiting for. Ahead was a crowd of adventurers and the student Riga Alme herself. Alma was incredibly beautiful, and looking ahead, she asked if this was the shop. The main characters were embarrassed and confused when they met the girl. Alma greeted the guy, wishing him a good day, and introduced herself, asking if he was fake. The guy agreed and asked if she was Riga's student. The girl laughed and replied that, as her teacher had already told him, she had come instead of him today. Alma added that her teacher had praised the boy's work and said that he made the most amazing weapons. The boy was embarrassed and did not believe her. Alicia looked at the guest with a sidelong glance. The protagonist was confused and replied that he had prepared the weapon for them to evaluate, while Alicia herself kept her eyes on him. The young man said that he had prepared several goods for them and they could choose the ones they liked, to which he responded with gratitude. The young man wondered if he was mixing quality items with inferior ones, and whether Almi would be able to tell the difference. The girl took the sword and felt it with her hands, trying to understand what it was made of. The student Riga replied that she would take this sword and daggers, 10 of each, and nothing more. The guys were amazed that the visual difference was not so noticeable, but the girl unmistakably chose the best. The young man smiled and replied that all this would cost the girl 1,450,000 crowns. Ame fell silent, and the protagonist waited patiently for payment, but the girl brought her fingers to her mouth and asked about the payment. The student Riga hugs the guy by the hand and asked for a discount. The guy became very confused, while Alma herself smiled innocently at him, and Alicia was very surprised. The girl continued to demand at least a small discount as a regular customer, but the guy tried to refuse. The young man noticed that the girl had decided to take the seduction, but decided for himself that she had picked the wrong guy. The main character thought about the fact that he has Alicia, whom he loves, but the things that this girl does were not disgusting to him. The protagonist noticed that the girl might be disappointed in him, and for him, it would be tantamount to death, so he pulled his hand away. The young man crossed his arms over his chest and refused. They say that this is the final amount. The girl was upset and replied that the seduction trick hadn't worked and the guy had guts, so she would pay. The young man was pleased until the girl said that the guy was truly a master of his craft and asked where he had worked before. The protagonist replied that he worked in the Revenant Empire, but was very lucky to move here. Almi added with a smile that they might cross paths again, so she wouldn't say goodbye to them. The girl blew him a kiss and wished him a quick meeting. The main character was proud of himself and thought that he could not be fooled so easily. The young man told Alicia that they were lucky to sell so many weapons at a good price today. But the girl did not answer, and the guy became worried. Alicia asked shyly if she still liked big guys. The protagonist did not understand the girl and asked what she was talking about. Alicia replied that she meant Lady Alma. The girl noticed that the guy was looking at her. The young man fell silent and did not know what to answer. The main character started to deny everything, saying that it wasn't so. Alicia almost cried and replied that it wasn't true, and she saw how he looked at her. The young man again could not answer anything and only asked her to listen to him, saying that a man is a male. The protagonist began to explain that wild males usually react to movement, to prey, and to threat, and he could not do anything with this instinct. The girl was upset and replied that if she couldn't do that, then did that mean she didn't deserve attention? The young man tried to calm her down, saying that he didn't mean that. Alicia suddenly hugged Fake by the arm. The guy was embarrassed and asked what she was doing. The girl closed her eyes and asked if she could hug him. Alicia asked again if she deserved attention. The girl, without stopping holding his hand, asked him if he liked girls like her. The guy tried to stop her, thinking that first of all, he liked Alicia. The protagonist understood that it was from her that he formed his preferences. The girl sadly let the guy go and apologized for putting him in such an awkward position. The guy replied that everything was fine. The heroes were silent. Today their trade ended, and the last customer was Alme. Today the heroes were able to earn 120,000 crowns, and this was the most profitable day on the market. Returning to the estate, the owner of the house replied that things were going well for Fight today. The young man agreed and replied that some of the orders came from a traveling merchant. The guy bowed and replied that that was all, and asked to be allowed to deviate, but the man stopped him. Goro silently lowered his gaze while the boy waited for an answer. The man answered honestly that he was amazed by the boy's success. The young man did not understand what was being discussed. Goro said he didn't think the guy would be able to establish such a distribution in a foreign country where no one knows him. The main character replied that he was just lucky and that for now most of his income depends on the merchant. If he loses interest in him, his profit will drop sharply. The young man thought that so many people supported him, including those who bought his works. The main character remembered that it was thanks to Alicia that he was able to grow to such heights. The man said that this might be true, but not all of his income depended on the merchant alone. The boy agreed and replied that, fortunately, some adventurers recommended him as a companion, so little by little he became stronger. Goro replied that this meant that his weapon really does help people. The man added that people come back to him because of his blacksmithing skills. The guy was embarrassed and thanked the man again. The owner of the house stood up from his chair and said that he had a favor to ask the guy. The young man replied that he would do everything he could, and the man opened the chest, taking out his sword. Goro asked if the young man could restore the sword. The main character took the sword and asked to let him look at it. The young man tried to read the data that was enchanted on this sword, but he began to squint his eyes, not understanding the words. The young man felt dizzy from the overload. The protagonist thought that the data was very dense, and it was as if he had crammed an entire library into his brain at once. The guy thought that if the blade caused such a sensation, it meant that it contained a lot of magical information than he was able to perceive. The owner of the house asked if everything was okay with the guy, and that he asked to allow him to concentrate. The main character noted that the enchantment itself is simple, but the amount of magic power invested in it is truly colossal. The guy noticed that there was damage everywhere, and if he used the sword in this condition, sooner or later it would break. The fake replied that he had identified the problem, and the man asked if he could fix it. The guy agreed, saying that due to the huge amount of magical information, he would not be able to fix it at once. The protagonist said that it would take about a day to fix it. Goro was happy with this news. The man advised him not to rush and to do everything carefully and reliably. The protagonist accepted the order and replied that he would do so. The young man realized that this blade meant a lot to Lord Goro, and it needed to be repaired carefully but quickly so that it could be returned to its owner's hands as soon as possible. The next day, the boy took up the work of Alicia's father's sword. The young man tried to read the data on the sword again and thought that many innate symbols and entire sections were not functioning. So he would have to restore everything with pinpoint accuracy so as not to disrupt the original magical structure. The protagonist realized that this sword was forged from an alloy of Irane and Alios iron. Young man, I think that based on the materials, one can judge that he is holding in his hands the work of a real master. Because the master's mark, the incredibly strong volume of magic, is incomparable, which is why it may take longer than he thought. The protagonist noticed that the one who wore this charm worked very hard on it for several days without rest. The guy understood that creating everything from scratch would be a hell of a job, but he could fix it. For the young man, it was according to his parents that the spell had not lost its power for more than 10 years. The protagonist began to assume that an alloy of two steels was capable of this, but he still abandoned this idea, thinking that it was a matter of skill and that the skills of a top-class blacksmith were involved. The guy noticed that it meant that his art had room to grow and continued working. The young man suggested that if he ever created such a weapon, he would make it so that it would survive the centuries. The guy won't do it for fame or a place in history. The young man thought that this was so, that after death, his blades could protect people. The protagonist stopped his train of thought and continued working. By midday, the bulk of the work was finished and the guy only had to make a few finishing touches. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. The guy told the guest to come in, and Alicia noticed that the guy was all about work and asked how the repair of the sword was going. The guy replied that he had done most of the work and only the finishing touches remained. The girl asked if he had managed to do so much in half a day, to which the guy replied that it was a regular sword repair. The girl smiled and, touching the sword, replied that fake was indeed incredible. Alicia said that this blade was forged by her father's father, that is, her grandfather. The young man was surprised and asked where her grandfather was now. Alice replied that he died 10 years ago. The boy noted that this meant that the blade was very dear to Mr. Goro, and the girl agreed with him. The young man thoughtfully added that he asked him to fix such a valuable thing. The boy understood that the Duke would not trust him with this blade without thinking twice. The girl replied that her father had tried to fix the sword, but he had failed and had been grieving about it for a long time. Alicia said that her father had no particular talent for blacksmithing and therefore was unable to restore the blade that he inherited after his grandfather's death. The young man was very surprised by this, but he understood the girl. The protagonist thought that this order was a test for him, and that Mr. Gorel had not yet fully recognized his skill, but still entrusted him with his blade. The guy realized that this meant that at the very least they believed in him, and this sword probably held a dear memory for him. The main character replied that now he had even less room for error, and the girl wished him good luck. The young man continued to work, and several hours passed since the final revision. The protagonist completed the final touches, and the renovation was completed. The guy thought about how he constantly checked every detail and tried to notice any flaws. I don't understand if he managed to recreate the original enchantment close enough, because he entered the teams dozens of times. The girl asked to look at the sword. The guy agreed, but warned that it might be hard for her to look at it because of the lack of magical information. Alicia took the sword anyway and tried to read it. The girl felt dizzy, and the guy, not noticing it, asked if everything was okay, to which the girl replied that it was a great job, although she had only been able to catch a glimpse of it. Alicia replied that she felt the emotions that her grandfather had put into the blade, and for her it was as if the blade had come to life and was bursting with new strength. The girl smiled and thanked the guy for returning the sword to the Barnasto house's former power. The protagonist smiled and replied that such words meant a lot to him. The boy answered confidently that he would immediately take the sword to Mr. Gorel. The girl said she was sure her father would jump for joy like a child, but the guy didn't believe it. The boy said he wouldn't do that, but the girl said her father could be surprisingly nice. The boy remembered how he had actually seen something like that once. The protagonist said that although he was nervous, now he couldn't wait to see the gentleman's reaction. The girl replied that he should run to him quickly. The Duke was very surprised and asked if he had fixed it so quickly. The young man responded with agreement, saying that he had restored the sword as best he could and asked to take a look. The man agreed and took the sword in his hands. Having pulled the sword out of its sheath, the man did not take his eyes off it. The Duke's look was sad, so the guy did not understand and waited for an answer. Alicia's father began testing the sword in motion and was greatly surprised. The man let go of the sword. Alicia's father tried to read the data on the sword. The man closed his eyes and the main character realized that it was hard for the Duke. Gorel sighed tiredly and answered in agreement that the sword of his father was exactly the same as on that day. The man burst into tears of happiness and added that it was when he first entrusted the sword to him. Gorel, with his eyes closed, kept repeating that this was the same sword. The man added that he never thought he would ever see its former grandeur and power. The Duke lowered his head and told Fake that here was truly an outstanding blacksmith. The boy was embarrassed and thanked his master. The young man bowed, and the man called out to the boy. Gorel recognized the main character as Alicia's fiancé. The guy was very surprised by this and asked the man again. The Duke replied that only he was worthy of taking care of his daughter. The protagonist thought that a lot of time would pass before he heard these words. The young man bowed his head again and thanked the man. But Fake's mood was depressed. The protagonist understood that he was just a fake groom for Alicia. Gorel stroked the guy's head and told him not to dare make his daughter sad. The young man agreed with him. The Duke replied that his daughter was very charming and asked the boy if he agreed with that. The protagonist agreed with him, and the man again added that if he dared to follow his unwavering impulse, his head would decorate the palisade. The guy was a little embarrassed, but he understood the man, and he said that if it was by mutual consent, then perhaps he would allow it. The young man did not understand how to react to this, and only thanked. The main character did not understand what kind of situation this was, because they were talking, and not about the sword, and now this is happening. The Duke added that he should not forget his blacksmithing and that his hands should not lose their skill. The boy agreed with him and replied that he would listen to his advice. Gorel warned him to keep his ears open, because once people find out that he is the only contender for his daughter's hand, there will be many unpleasant people around him. The guy listened to these words, and after the man let him go, the main character left the office and did not understand what to do now. The only thing the guy understood was that he first needed to talk to Alicia about the fictitious engagement. Meanwhile, the girl was cleaning the protagonist's materials for making swords. The young man entered his forge, and the girl greeted him. The protagonist asked if she had decided to tidy up a bit, to which she responded in the affirmative. The guy noticed that the girl even swept the floor and thanked her for making the forge so clean. The girl was embarrassed and laughed. Alicia asked the boy what her father said, and the young man replied that he was pleased with the result of the repair. The protagonist added that the Duke was very happy with what he saw. Alicia was delighted and said that it was very good. The girl laughed again and said that she would go to her father a little later because she wanted to see how happy he was. The young man smiled sadly and added that the Duke recognized him. The main character finished the sentence that now he can act as the girl's fiancé. Alicia was very surprised by this. The girl asked again if it was true, and if he had said exactly that. The young man responded with agreement. Alicia was very happy about this and screamed with joy that they finally managed to do it. The girl added that they were now officially engaged, but the guy interrupted her and called out. The young man began to talk about their false engagement and added that he increasingly thought that it was wrong to continue this deception any longer. The girl dropped the napkin and asked the guy again what he meant. The protagonist recalled his previous conversation with the Duke and replied that Lord Gorel sincerely cared about Alicia and he always put her feelings above noble conventions. The young man reminded her of that very essence when the Duke tested him as a blacksmith and a contender for his daughter's hand. The guy replied that he spoke to him as an equal, as an ordinary commoner, and approved of the relationship, despite their very different statuses. The young man was very upset and added that this was precisely why he could not bear to lie to the man any longer. The boy said that he had to confess everything to the master. Fake added that there was no love in their relationship from the very beginning. The girl was very upset by this and did not know what to answer. The boy had no idea that the words he said would cause him so much pain. The young man realized that he liked Alicia even more than he thought. The girl was upset and began to speak. Alicia bowed to the guy and began to apologize abruptly, trying to justify herself. The girl began to tell him that in fact at that moment she had been misleading him, and she was terribly ashamed. The guy didn't understand what she was talking about and asked her for details. The girl began to explain that on the day she asked him to be her fake fiancé, all the words about cover and disguise were lies. Alicia said she should have told him about it earlier, but the main thing was really something else. The girl admitted that she was in love with Fake. The guy was very surprised by this, and the girl continued to say that she had always been in love with him. The girl smiled, upset, and said that she loved him again. Alicia said that these feelings had troubled her since their very first meeting. The girl said that at first she was just interested in him as a person. Alicia justified herself by saying that his smile was dazzling like the sun, and he couldn't even imagine how much she longed to see that smile again. The girl said that she fell in love with the way he was obsessed, working in the forge with the dream of becoming the best, and how he softly laughed at her stupidity every moment spent together. The guy continued to listen, and the girl said that she adored every single part of him. The girl closed her eyes and smiled shyly at the main character. The young man was embarrassed by such a frank confession and blushed. The main character asked again if this was true, to which he received consent, and the girl again apologized for lying to him all the time. Alicia replied that she had dragged him into all this out of her own selfishness and bowed her head. The girl said that he was always thinking about how to please his father and was always kind to her. But despite all this, it was very hard for him, and now she had also thrown unrequited feelings at him. The guy quickly hugged the girl, pressing her to himself. The young man began to ask her again about unrequited feelings and did not understand what she was talking about. The main character admitted that he also loves her with all his heart. I continued to hug the girl, and he began to confess to her that he'd always loved only her, and she was the only thing that kept him going while working at court. The young man began to explain that her presence and rare visits to the workshop were his only light. The young man was very upset and began to cry, saying that she was his salvation. Embarrassed, the guy continued to say that he always thought that she was unattainable for him, even though he was a court blacksmith, but always only a commoner, and she was the daughter of a duke. The guy admitted that he kept telling himself not to fall in love with her and forbade his heart to beat faster, but he still loved her and broke the embrace. The young man replied that he wanted to be there not as a fake groom, but as a real one. The guy confessed once again that he loved her and repeated this phrase several times. The girl was embarrassed and asked her to stop saying it. The young man did not understand why she was asking this, and the girl explained that he should not talk about it so often. Alicia admits that she is now making a scary face with happiness. The guy smiled and hugged the girl again. The main character asked the girl if they could start all over again and continued hugging her. The girl agreed and said that she was no longer a fake bride and groom, but a real couple. The guy agreed with her. Alicia asked the young man why he fell in love with her while they were sitting next to each other in the forge. The guy said that she always came to the forge to see him, to which she agreed and replied that she just liked watching him work. The protagonist was embarrassed and replied that he didn't know about it, but it meant a lot to him. Holding hands, the guy said that, except for her, almost no one treated him kindly. The young man added that she literally saved him, made him move on, no matter what. Alicia, upset, replied that if she had found out about the bullying in the forge and had been able to notice it earlier, everything would have been different. The guy replied that she couldn't be there 24 hours a day, so it wasn't her fault. The young man remembered that the forge masters behaved decently in Alicia's presence. But as soon as she noticed the bruise on his cheek, the truth broke out. The young man asked the girl to also tell him when she fell in love with him. Alicia shyly asked if he was that interested, to which she agreed. The girl asked if he remembered their meeting under the tree 3 years ago. The main character remembered that it was their first meeting, and the girl replied that her mother left this world that year. The guy was very surprised and replied that he did not know about it, because he had never seen Alicia's mother and did not wonder where she was. The girl added that her mother's last words were advice to find what makes her happy. Alicia explained that she had only mechanically learned the etiquette of magic and fencing, but she did it not because she liked it, or because it brought her pleasure, but because it was expected of her. Alicia said that when she was overcome with heavy thoughts, she decided to go out to her mother's favorite tree for some fresh air, and it was there that the girl met a smiling young man. The boy felt embarrassed and thought it brought back memories of when he was filled with hope, but after a few hours he was faced with despair. The girl remembered that she had asked him a very stupid question, but he had answered it with such enthusiasm and kindness at their first meeting. Alicia added that she carried his smiling image in her memory and looked for him with her eyes at every ball and then realized that she had fallen in love. The young man became embarrassed and asked if she had found the job she wanted to do. The girl smiled and nodded, saying that she wanted to live with him. Alicia added that she wants to laugh with him at stupid things, share difficult and happy moments. The girl said that she wanted to be there when he became the best blacksmith in the world and see it first. The guy looked at the girl and listened to her while she spoke, as if that was all she wanted now. Alicia asked if that sounded strange, to which the guy just smiled. The main character replied that it was not strange, and he was incredibly happy that she would stay with him, because nothing could be better. At some point, the guy forgot that he had a dream of becoming the best blacksmith in the world, because then he only thought about how to get out of hell. There were days when he seriously thought about whether it was worth holding on to the title of blacksmith at all, if it would help him escape. But now the main character knew that he wanted to become the best for the sake of his beloved. The realization did not come immediately, or some time after the main characters finally opened their hearts to each other. The couple stood in a duke's office, and the man said that Alice had received another invitation to the ball, just like Fike. The duke added that one of the 2 letters had reached him, and he had, of course, read it. The man handed over the envelope, and the boy saw that it was from the palace blacksmith shop. The protagonist sighed and saw that the sender was Morgan, and did not understand what he needed from him after so many years. The guy unfolded the paper. The letter was from Morgan. The girl noticed the tension on his face. She asked what was written in it. The letter stated that the guild was currently in decline, so providing the knights with quality weapons was becoming difficult. Each blacksmith worked without rest. The young man sighed, speaking his phrase into the air so that his comrade would return as soon as possible. The man looked up from the paper and looked at the boy. The letter he received asked him to pass on a message to Fake if he was still working at the estate, and if he was fired, they apologized for the inconvenience. The young man understood everything, but he thought that if he were useless, he would be thrown out, naturally. That is exactly what was indicated in the message. The Duke folded his hands in front of him and asked his interlocutor that he had heard rumors about the merciless exploitation of the boy at court. He wondered if he was afraid to return there, because, in that case, the boy would again face the same treatment. The guy lowered his head and sadly clarified that, most likely, that's exactly how it would be. He was asked a direct question. Does he plan to return? If he thinks about the welfare of the house, then the title of the court blacksmith of the Revenald Empire is quite a worthy role. The guy silently looked at the man, listening to his speech. Fake himself was thinking, since he would become part of the ducal family, the man's reasoning about the benefits seemed justified. the title of Imperial Blacksmith could help glorify the ducal family. The man continued to assure that, for a nobleman, such a calculation is not without meaning. However, he asked to know that payry is not the only goal of their class. The guy was surprised, not believing what was said, but the man clarified that power and the children's happiness, that's where the balance was needed. When making a choice, both of these spectrums were taken into account. Therefore, the man could not allow his son to go to a place where he would be unhappy. The young man and the girl froze in bewilderment, not expecting to hear such a thing. The girl blushed. A smile appeared on her face. Closing her eyes, she was surprised. Could it be that her father had started to consider Fake his son? The man tried to justify himself, so that he could not be suddenly misunderstood. The fact that Alicia was not yet married was entirely due to Lord Goral, because with her beauty and status, she could have been engaged long ago. He really did put the girl's happiness first. The guy bowed, saying at the same time that he did not want to return to the Empire. Goral paused for a moment, then offered to write the refusal himself, as it would look more weighty. The blacksmith thanked him for his help. He still believed that the guy, in the Empire, was treated as expendable material. Alicia interrupted her father. The man asked her what she wanted. The girl decided to deliver the letter with the blacksmith. She needed to go to the ball, so there was an opportunity to deliver it personally. Father didn't understand why she needed all this extra trouble, especially since she didn't like going to such events. The question of why she needed it was brewing again. Alicia received invitations only because everyone thought she was free, and now there was an opportunity to show the whole world her fiancé. Her words caused a blush to appear on the young man's face. The father thought about his daughter's words, then turned to Fake and asked if he agreed to this. He answered affirmatively. The man was pleased with his answer. The guy thought, if Alicia was ready to go to the ball for this, then he definitely needed to. Besides, the young man wanted to declare to everyone the reality of their relationship. The man agreed. He volunteered to prepare the letter and asked the guys to prepare for departure. Left alone, Fake expressed gratitude to the bride, but she decided that it was not worth doing this. She herself wanted to give the letter in public. The senders behaved rather arrogantly. The girl was angry that the Empire dared to look down on her husband. She shouted loudly for them to work in their own workshop, and they went crazy with envy, because the genius of a blacksmith like Fake would not be theirs. Alicia placed her hands on the groom's stomach and assured them that if they found out that the young man had become a member of the Barnasto house, those people would be covered with shame. The young man was glad that his bride had done so much for him, and if it weren't for her, he wouldn't have been able to stand next to her at that moment. Alicia was embarrassed by his words. In her opinion, they were not true, because he himself also helped her a lot. It turned out that the girl's dream of happiness is to walk next to Fake. The guy could only utter something unintelligible, but he thought about how, when it was revealed, Alicia began to talk more often about her feelings. She completely agreed with him, and the next moment, she clung to him with hugs. Fake hugged her back. Unexpectedly, the girl confessed her love to him, but at these words, the young man fell into a stupor. It was unusual for him to hear something like this, and he did not know how to react to it. Their eyes met, but despite the fact that the girl was nervous, she felt very happy. The young man smiled, looking at her. Alicia asked him if his heart was really beating just as wildly. The guy decided to joke back. If he became even happier, he simply risked tearing himself to pieces. Alicia burst out laughing. She was amused by the groom's words. Fake looked at her with loving eyes, thinking that before he could live alone, looking at other lovers. He didn't understand how it was possible to spend so much time together. But now every day spent with Alicia was joyful. They decided to end the conversation. It was time to start preparing for departure. The man angrily slammed his fist on the table. There were open envelopes and letters lying nearby. Looking at them, he was overcome with shivers. He was going crazy with anticipation, not understanding why the answer never came. Did they really dare to mock him? The boss felt humiliated by the blacksmith's behavior, who did not send a return letter. He clutched the paper tightly in his hand, practically growling to himself that if Fake was near Lady Alicia, he should send an answer immediately, and if not, then at least the Barnasto house would honor him with such an honor. The man recalled how he contacted other blacksmiths from the workshop. He had to crawl on his knees, begging them, thanks to which some still returned. In addition, He trampled his pride for the sake of survival, and these people preferred to leave him without an answer and did not even think of returning. But the most important among them was Fake. However, the commander could be wrong, and the young man was not a brilliant master of blacksmithing. Clutching his face with his hands, the man remembered that he had something to tell, and it would probably improve his situation a little. In his memories, the son called his father to get his help. Without his support, the boy would be finished. He hoped that he would not abandon him to his fate. Expectations were not met. The father would not help. Since the knight commander decided to get rid of his son, he automatically ceased to be a member of their house. He was already placed with the help of connections, and he repaid by being expelled from the guard. He let the family down, so the status of the house became comparable to that of a yard dog. The son should have been happy that he was simply thrown out without being asked to pay. Morgan still tried to persuade his father to give him a chance, bursting into tears, but the sentence was harsh. The father expelled his son from the family. Thus, the boy lost his home, his family, and was forced to huddle in his current location. The office followed the same path, and the subjects fled. Who where? He was pulled out of his thoughts by the sound of voices discussing the nailed-down Lady Alicia with her fiancé, who was apparently Fake. The man refused to believe it. How could this be? At that moment, a carriage drove up. Footsteps were heard throughout the area. The couple got out of the carriage. They looked at the palace with a smile. The guy thought how long it had been since he had been there. The ball will be held in the royal castle. Many nobles from other countries have arrived there, and servants are scurrying about in different directions. The whole situation brought back memories for the guy. They squeezed their hands tighter. The long journey of everyday life is tiring, so Alicia suggested they rest a little. They had already prepared one of the rooms, right in the palace, and the young man panicked a little. He had heard that most of the nobles rested there during the ball. This was done so that the guests would not have to stay in the inns, and could have a comfortable stay in the inns, and could have a comfortable stay in the empire. At least that's what Leafy told Faiku. This time he arrived as Alicia's fiancé. The guys were standing in the middle of a huge, luxuriously furnished room. The couple usually lived together, but despite the fact that they were not yet married, they were already formally considered husband and wife. Realizing this, both blushed with awkwardness. The girl cheerfully noted that the time had come when they began to live in the same room, but Fake began to get quite nervous and only quickly agreed with her. He remembered the stern face of Mr. Goral when he warned the young man not to do anything stupid, otherwise he could regret it. For this reason, the young man decided to sleep somewhere on the sofa. The bride, on the contrary, was glowing with happiness. She asked the groom if he was happy, but the guy was confused and asked her the same thing. The girl hugged him, looking into his eyes. She was very happy. He himself also understood that he couldn't help but feel joy when the love of his life was nearby, but he was embarrassed to say so. They continued to stand silently, hugging each other. There was a knock on the door from outside, asking Alicia and Faiku for permission to come in. It was Leafy. The guy opened the door. The maid apologized for interrupting the rest. She introduced several young people who wanted to greet the couple. Faye quickly turned to Alicia. The girl gave her consent. He sheepishly asked if he should have gone with her, but the bride decided that the guy didn't want that. But the young man refuted her concerns. Now, as her husband, it was his direct responsibility to accompany her. Then began the endless greetings, with aristocrats constantly arriving, their mouths open in amazement. Their faces were distorted for a moment in shock. Apparently rumors of the engagement had reached them too. Some recognized Fike, as he worked as a blacksmith in the Empire. Their cheeks twitched, trying to maintain a friendly mask. Judging by the looks on everyone's faces, it was obvious that no one expected to see a commoner as Alicia's chosen one. They were quickly approaching. The man opened the door, apologizing to the girl. And at that very moment, the one who entered froze in mid-sentence, just like Fake. They stared at each other in shock. The boy looked at the man in horror as he tried to understand what was going on and how Fake got there. The boy's heart began to beat wildly. He put his hand on his left side. The girl looked at him with alarm. Morgan asked her, dumbfounded, why she had arrived at the ball with the blacksmith. The girl without hesitation clarified that Fake is her fiancé. What he heard shocked the man even more. The guy remained silent. After a while, Morgan was able to speak. Turning to the girl, it was said that she could only marry a skilled blacksmith. She confirmed his thoughts. That's exactly how it was. That's why the hero became her fiancé. However, The man considered the guy a talentless person who couldn't create something unique. The girl again did not agree. For her, the young man was a skilled blacksmith and a master of his craft. His skill was recognized by Lord Goral. A maid appeared behind her, holding an envelope in her hand. She handed the letter to Morgan. It was the Duke of Barnasto's reply to his recent message. Fake's face tensed even more. The girl looked at him sadly. After reading the letter, the man bared his teeth in anger. The next moment, he exploded and shouted at the guy, indignant that he was not going to return to the palace, and also dared to be insolent to him. The young man was frightened by such a reaction. Beads of sweat appeared on his face from tension. Morgan's intense gaze sent shivers through the blacksmith's body, and he couldn't say anything. The young man tried to come to his senses, because the guy no longer served this man before him, so he could not have power over him. But before his eyes flashed the memories of the tyranny that Fake had repeatedly suffered from Morgan. Apparently, it still left an impression deep in his memory. All these 3 years of pain still pierced the body of the young man, which made him tremble more and more, and his voice stuck somewhere in his throat. He understood that from the outside it looked pathetic. He needed to come to his senses faster. Unexpectedly, Alicia took his hand, intertwining their fingers. The girl smiled a calm smile. From this sight, the guy began to calm down, realizing that the bride was doing nothing but saving him. But thanks to this, Fike was still able to pull himself together. The hero rebuffed his former boss, confidently declaring that he did not intend to return to the palace. He wanted to live his life as Alicia's husband and a blacksmith. Morgan was taken aback by this statement at first, but then he was overcome with rage again, and he clenched his jaw even tighter. The girl did not remain silent and also intervened. She did not know the reason for such a strong desire to return Fake, but as his fiancée, she did not want to let him go to a place where injustice and bullying reigned. The man was literally shaking from overwhelming negative emotions. He believed that he had done so much for this young man. Unable to restrain himself, Morgan lunged at the boy, swinging his arm to strike, wanting to teach him a lesson for such a price. His fist was stopped, blocked by hands. Leafy stood up for Fake while he was in this state. She performed a move in which she put the man's hand behind his back and forced him to lie on the floor, thereby immobilizing him. He swore at the girl to let him go. He was angry that the maid dared to behave like that with him. Leafy was outraged that Morgan wanted to harm her master, and warned the man not to forget about Fake's involvement with the Duke's family. Anyone who wishes to harm the Duke of Barnasto will receive their just deserts. Morgan trembled on the floor, crawling towards the boy, who tensed at his approach. Suddenly, Morgan howled loudly, begging Fake he wanted to take back his words, said earlier, exposing them as false. He decided to admit honestly that if the blacksmith did not return, he would lose his position at court. The man hoped that the title of court blacksmith would also benefit the boy himself. Alicia answered instead of the groom. They didn't need this title. The guys had already discussed everything with her father, and he supported their decision. Morgan was in tears, but then he heard footsteps above him. Fake repeated once again that he would not return. He was also grateful for all their past years together. The former boss grabbed the young man's leg to keep him from leaving and continued to beg. He was even ready to fulfill any request, but the young man irritably asked to let him go. The man was grabbed by the arm. Leafy did not want him to touch the master with his hands. The girl threatened him that if he disobeyed Fake again, she would be forced to report his behavior. Morgan began to sob even harder and more sadly. Morgan left the room. Fake watched him silently, and his bride smiled. Finally, the guy was able to breathe a sigh of relief. At the same moment, the girl hugged him, supporting his steadfastness. She was pleased with how well he held himself in front of his former boss. He thanked her in return. The young man embraced his bride and told her about his feelings at the moment Morgan appeared. His whole body was shaking with fear, remembering those monstrous days in the forge at the court. Fake could not escape from this place alone. Everything happened thanks to Alicia. The girl believed that the hero himself had done a lot. The young man understood one thing clearly. He had no intention of returning to the palace, knowing the difficulties that lay ahead. But together with Alicia, they would be able to overcome them. On the city street, Fake and his bride were trading. The girl was counting the results, because in one day they sold everything and earned 800,000 crowns. Lately, sales have not grown much, and at the moment, this was their limit. The guy figured in his mind, Considering the quality of the work efficiency and the magic iron, it would not be possible to raise the price. If they wanted to increase sales, then it was necessary to use high-quality materials in the work. It remained to figure out where to get them. The guy wanted to turn to Rig for advice, but he doubted whether there was any point in doing so in the current situation. The current revenue was 830,000 crowns. The Duke also noticed that sales were not growing. The young man apologized for this, but he had no need to do so. The man opened a drawer and placed the sheets of paper with the articles on the table, asking Fake to look at them. After examining the contents, the boy asked what it was. His father explained that the building was originally built as a forge, and all the basic tools were already in place. Now the premises were up for sale, and so the Duke was interested in Fake's opinion on the matter. But the young man did not understand the hints. That's why Gorl directly offered him to open his own workshop. This could increase his recognition and also simplify sales. The hero began to get nervous, thinking about his own workshop. He tried to justify the need to learn noble manners and other obligations. His father interrupted him, asking conspiratorially if the boy's dream wasn't to become the greatest blacksmith in the world. Alicia told this to her father, but the Duke decided that the guy might have already changed his mind and abandoned this goal. Fake hastened to assure his father that he was mistaken. His dream remained the same, but other, more important things had appeared. Gorl became interested in what exactly. The young man blushed with embarrassment and, embarrassed, said that he wanted to become a worthy husband for Alicia. To tell the truth, he decided that the girl was too good for him because she was noble, kind, and beautiful. To stand next to her, the guy wanted to study. If he, as an uncouth commoner, appeared in society, it would disgrace the girl. So Fake did not want to allow this. The father opened his mouth in surprise. He was very surprised by what was said. Then the Duke agreed. The young man definitely needed to master noble etiquette, and he had already arranged for a teacher. However, he told the hero so that he knew. A worthy husband for Alicia is the greatest blacksmith in the world. Despite the importance of etiquette, Gorl wanted the boy to strive for excellence. That was what he thought was important. The man hoped to convey that to Fake. The words had an inspirational effect on the young man. He enthusiastically agreed, which pleased the Duke. In this case, the father offered the blacksmith to take the chest in which there was money. The young man felt ashamed. He hastened to justify himself that he could not accept it, but the master insisted that he open it and look inside. The guy did as he was told. The chest turned out to be filled with moments. Gorl asked him not to worry because Fake earned this money himself, and the man only added a little. But it was not even worth thinking about. After all, the young man was his daughter's fiancé, so Gorl's only wish was for the young man to become the best blacksmith in the Barnasto household. The young man was pleasantly surprised and made a promise. 3 years ago, Alicia was sad, her hand on the back of the sofa. She thought about the words of the guy when he asked what he wanted, and he had one such desire. He wanted to be the best blacksmith in the world. He was burning with enthusiasm when he spoke about it. The girl said his name out loud to herself. As far as she could remember, the guy was about her age, maybe a little older. She remembered how happy he looked when he told her about his dream. Alicia felt a strange sensation inside her. She pressed her hand to her collarbone. For some reason unknown to her, the girl could not get his smile out of her head. She felt a previously unfamiliar feeling. Her heart sank, but at the same time it was warm and pleasant. The maid, noticing the strange order of her mistress, began to worry whether everything was all right with her. Alicia was scared by the surprise. Leafy appeared so suddenly that she did not notice, so in the future, she asked not to sneak up and not to scare. The maid called her several times, but the girl was lost in her thoughts, so the servant was worried that something might have happened. Alicia blushed, caught red-handed, and brushed off the suspicions, assuring him that everything was fine. Livy did not calm down. From the moment the mistress returned from Ravonald, she was constantly confused, and to the girl her remarks seemed like nonsense. The maid decided to go to the last. She hinted in no uncertain terms that she might have met someone in the city. The aristocrat got worried. Suddenly someone saw them, but, it seems, she did not notice anything like that. The young woman looked at the girl very meaningfully, and this made her feel more and more ashamed. The maid recalled that the Duchess had become so thoughtful after her independent walks. Alicia was amazed at her interlocutor's quick-wittedness. She, meanwhile, decided not to drag it out and asked straight out, Was Alicia really in love? This was a real blow for the girl. She was speechless from such frankness. The young lady denied everything, but the maid's keen eye did not miss her flushed cheeks. It was all quite clear at first glance. Still, Levi had been taking care of her mistress since she was born, so she noticed any changes in her. Trembling all over from embarrassment, the girl nevertheless decided to tell, not that she had fallen in love. The maid asked her leading questions to help her figure it out, asking if she was constantly thinking about the young man. Alicia herself did not know what she felt for him. In the end, the aristocrat agreed that she really did think about that guy all the time, but it was difficult to understand whether it was love or not, because she had never been hurt and had never felt anything like that. They met only once and talked a little. Could it have happened so suddenly? Leafy was delighted. Apparently it was love at first sight. The girl was surprised by such a formulation. Her face was still flushed. The maid tried to find out what feelings Alicia experienced when she thought about the young man. She answered uncertainly, thinking that she liked him. But when the young lady remembered their conversation, her heart felt warm. His smile was so sincere, so inspiring. After her mother's death, all of Alicia's days became empty and gray. But when she met the young man, it was as if a piece of the world had been returned to her. Leify felt sad from her story. However, Alicia believed that all this did not mean that she was in love. The maid supported the girl. No matter what, these wonderful feelings were very important. She was sincerely glad that such a person appeared in the lady's life. The servant also advised to give the feelings a chance if he was really dear to her. Perhaps this guy with a kick would be the one who would support her, walk next to her, and love her with all his heart. Alicia asked her interlocutor if she had ever fallen in love herself. The girl thought before answering. It turned out that Leafy had never experienced this before. She decided to tell the truth. The mistress was surprised, because the maid was older than her. The girl clarified that she simply had not met a suitable partner. Alicia, there were almost no men in their house, and Leafy especially devoted herself entirely to caring for her and this house. She simply had no time for a personal life and romance. The servant laughed. It was enough for her that her master was happy. Then she felt the same. So they just wanted to continue to observe their feelings. She suggested that on the next visit to Revenald, they talk to the young man, thereby checking whether this feeling was real. The girl liked the idea of the next meeting. She decided to really talk to him and thanked Leafy for his support. The maid promised to wait for good news from her. Some time passed, and Alicia was invited back to Revenald, where Fake lived. In her normal state, the girl couldn't stand balls and went there every time with reluctance. However, now her soul felt light, because she would be able to see the young man again after a long separation. Morgan met the girl and greeted her. She remembered that it was the blacksmith from the workshop, and because of family matters, they had exchanged formal greetings several times. But this man was one of those she did not want to see at all. The man kindly asked why she had come to the palace, and the lady told him about the blacksmith Feek who had begun serving at court. Morgan was perplexed when he heard this name. He was worried that this guy might have done something wrong, so he immediately apologized to Lady Alicia for the trouble he had caused. The girl reassured him that the young man had done nothing wrong. Since he was new to the shop, she wanted to greet the young man. Morgan realized what was going on. Fake was working in the workshop, so he volunteered to accompany the lady there. Upon arrival, a distinctive knock was heard. Before opening the door, the man shouted that he was going to come in. The young man was working on a sword when guests entered the room. He immediately asked the boss how he could help, but suddenly he saw a girl next to him. Their eyes met. He called her by name, and the aristocrat was surprised that he remembered her name. The man noticed something odd. She wanted to greet the new face in their shop, but it seemed they had met before. His question was answered by clarifying that only once. Alicia pretended to remember the young man's name, although she knew it by heart. The guy was happy. He was flattered that a girl like her remembered him. Suddenly, awkwardness appeared between them. The chief watched them silently, and suddenly the lady turned to him, thanking him for accompanying her, and let him go on with his official duties. She wanted to chat with Sir Fake for a while, and then leave. Morgan agreed to do as she wanted, but he looked at the guy with an unkind look that made him feel uneasy. Before leaving, the man put his hand on the hero's shoulder, pretending to give advice on how to behave. However, in reality, he pressed hard with his fingers in the place where he held, at that moment shaking with anger. The girl found this strange. Alicia was very nervous, so Fake addressed her by her last name. She felt uneasy about such formality because at their first meeting she had introduced herself by name. The girl plucked up her courage and asked the guy to drop the formalities, but he did not understand her request. She said that he could call her Alicia. The young man was very surprised how he could call her by her name if he was not an aristocrat. The girl apologized. She didn't think that he might be embarrassed by this. And the young man thought that this was not the case. He was just an ordinary commoner. She confessed to him there weren't many people her age in the palace, so she would like to communicate with him from time to time. Maybe even become friends, if the young man wouldn't mind. The girl herself was surprised by what she was saying. The young man did not know what to say. The girl was worried that he might refuse. However, Fake agreed, calling her by name. He was only glad of such an opportunity. Alicia was genuinely surprised by the sudden consent. She apologized in case her request seemed selfish, although there was nothing wrong with it. The girl again clarified whether he wanted to be friends with her. The guy was happy, of course. He wanted to communicate. The aristocrat thanked him for it. In that case, Alicia asked if the young man would return if, from now on, she would visit him. Fake agreed with a smile and invited her to come at any time. The girl timidly wished him good luck in his work as he said goodbye. They waved goodbye to each other as they left, Alicia becoming even more convinced of her desire to get closer to Fake. After this, arriving at any ball, she immediately ran to the forge, to the young man. And first, their communication was awkward, but gradually the nervousness dissolved. She always enjoyed being with a young man, and time flew by very quickly in those moments. The girl wanted their meetings to last forever, her feelings to grow stronger with each new conversation. Fake's voice, smile, character, way of thinking, and their topics of conversation, as well as kindness and desire to become the best blacksmith in the world, all of this evoked feelings in her. Little by little, step by step, Alicia began to love him for everything that was only in him. But at one point during such meetings, the girl, as usual, looked into the workshop. The swords were lying on the floor, scattered, and the guy was sitting nearby with a dejected look. She greeted the young man, but the answer did not come immediately. The hero turned towards her. His clothes and face were all smeared. He asked if she had come to visit again, and apologized for being so tired. Alicia knew something was wrong, and it had been going on for quite some time. She asked anxiously about his well-being. Perhaps something had happened in the workshop. The hero tried to distract her by saying that he had a lot of work to do, and he didn't even have time to change his uniform. As a result, he stood in front of the guest, covered in dirt. The girl was understanding and suggested visiting him another time. Fake always told her the same thing, but even she could sense the deterioration in him. In the workshop, she met only Fake. At first, Alicia considered it luck to find the guy alone inside, but when she thought about it, she began to realize that she had never seen anyone else working in the workshop, and the young man was wasting away every day, literally before her eyes. The guy's clothes were shabby and dirty. It seemed as if he had never left the forge, as if he had worked day and night. Alicia was very sad and worried about this. Leffy told her mistress without even conducting an investigation, but simply looking at the facts, a tired appearance, working alone, worn-out clothes, all pointed to a bad attitude and tyranny from other blacksmiths. Alicia agreed. It was the only possible option. But the question of what to do about it tormented her. As a native of another country, she could not influence this situation. The only option left was for Fike to confess everything himself. The girl thought about it, but the young man dreamed of becoming the best blacksmith in the world. If he tells the truth about being bullied at court, he will most likely be fired, and he will take several steps back from his dream. Fake was driven by a dream, so much so that he was willing to tolerate a successful attitude. Alicia despaired because the young man closed himself off and did not talk about what was gnawing at him. She was afraid of the thought that one day he would no longer be able to live like this. Suddenly, the maid suggested a wild idea, such as saving the young man. She suggested to the lady to ask Fake to become her fiancé. Alicia was surprised by such a proposal. Leafy reminded her that their country was famous for its blacksmiths, and the Barnasto household had all the facilities to practice blacksmithing. Besides, if Lord Goral knew about his daughter's wish, he would certainly approve of such a candidacy. The aristocrat understood that if the young man became her fiancé, his status would also change. Having become a member of the ducal family, he would be given various duties, and he would also need to master etiquette. She was worried that all this could prevent Fake from focusing on his goal, and he might begin to be perceived not as a skilled blacksmith, but as the fiancé of the Duke's third daughter. Leffy agreed with her. Becoming her fiancé, the young man will have many other things to do. It will be much more difficult to concentrate on his favorite thing. However, Alicia forgot that Fake was a talented blacksmith with a strong and unbending will. Since his desire was not broken even by his entourage in the palace, then life as the groom of the Duke's daughter will not shake him either. Besides, the maid asked the girl if she loved him. She confirmed her words. Alicia wanted to help him in any way she could. From Leafy's point of view, Fake would be much happier with her mistress. She thought that the lady was also mutually interested in him, which is why he always found time for her. As a sign of support, the interlocutor took the lady by the hand. In any case, she should have offered the guy her idea. If he didn't want to, no one would force him. Alicia was inspired by the fact that Leafy thought so. The maid didn't even think that who in the world could be against becoming Barnasto's fiancé. The girl thought about it. She imagined a smiling Fake and her face changed. She thanked the servant for his help. She was determined to talk to the young man. She would definitely be able to make him happy. She herself wanted such a man to become her husband. The maid, with a smile, wished the lady good luck. After some time, Alicia arrived at the palace and went to the workshop. There, she found Fake lying on the floor, all beaten up. She thought with despair that the blacksmiths did not even hesitate to leave bruises on his face. She approached him and called out. The girl touched the young man's forehead and he opened his eyes. Suddenly, Fake jumped up, shouting that he hadn't managed to process the sword. But then he noticed Lady Alicia in front of him. Fake slept peacefully in his bed, in his room, in the Duke's house. The girl wished him good morning, which woke the guy up. Seeing his sweetly smiling bride in front of him, he was afraid that he was still in his room. His beloved came only to wake him up and apologized if she had suddenly scared him. Having come to his senses, the young man also wished her good morning. He was surprised that he had slept for so long. The guy was nervous. Even though they were officially considered bride and groom, they did not spend the night in the same bedroom. The girl apologized for not waking him up right away, because he was sleeping so sweetly. The guy brushed it off. Everything was fine, he was grateful that she came, but he was also interested in what time it was. Alicia said it was only 7 in the morning, but her father wanted to see the hero. She suggested going to him together. The hero jumped out of bed, heard about Lord Goral. In that case, he needed to hurry. Fake valued his relationship with his bride, and finally, from fictitious, their engagement became real. Therefore, he could not lose something so precious to his heart. Everything that concerned marriage was decided by the parents. Simply put, Fake needed to maintain a good relationship with his fiancé's father so that he would not even think about breaking off the engagement. Alicia stopped the young man. All his hair was disheveled. She wanted to help fix it. The young man went to the mirror. His hair really wasn't in the best shape. He needed to fix this mess on his head as soon as possible. He began to fantasize about what the Duke would think of him, and did not want to give his daughter to such a slob. The girl called out to the groom and offered her help, and then invited him to sit on a chair. Having prepared a comb and water, she combed and styled his hair with tenderness and care. Fake couldn't help himself and asked the bride to forgive him for the trouble he had caused. For Alicia, this sounded like nonsense, as one of her duties as a future wife was to help maintain her husband's appearance. The guy asked her if she really thought so and was delighted, blushing. The bride poked him in the cheek with her finger, laughing at his flushed face. The hero made exactly the same movement and noticed that her cheeks were also bright red. Alicia became embarrassed and tried to justify herself. Fake pointed to her ears. They also turned red. Was his future wife really that embarrassed? Also, her cheeks were so soft. Alicia looked offended and threatened that if he didn't stop teasing her, she wouldn't help him comb his hair anymore. The boy joked that it was too harsh a punishment. He confessed to her that no one had ever helped him put his hair in order before since the morning. This made the young man feel unaccustomed, and the girl was surprised because servants always helped her with her hair and makeup. This was the norm among nobles, and the young man decided that he should also start asking servants for help. Alicia puffed out her cheeks. She didn't agree to this. She wanted to help with the styling herself. Fake was surprised and asked if she was sure she wanted to do this every day, since such work was quite tiring. she began to scold the groom. He was so narrow-minded, how could he not understand her true intentions? The girl admitted that she loved the young man very much, so she wanted to help him in everything she could. And to see him sleepy in the morning with a slight mess on his head is the best reward for her. Alicia suddenly realized that the guy was against it. She was only thinking about herself, but perhaps Fake didn't like it very much. The hero was so embarrassed that he blushed even more, but then he was able to squeeze out that he really liked her care. The bride, hugging his knees, happily announced that that was what had been decided. The hero panicked. If she came to him every morning, his heart would not withstand such care. Until recently, the boy could not even imagine that they would become husband and wife. All these moments felt like a dream to him. But he still couldn't relax. They remained a groom and a bride. The young man had to work harder to become the best blacksmith in the world, and a worthy husband for Alicia. The girl finished doing her hair, and seeing the result, the guy called her for her excellent work. She reminded him that he had dried his hair with wind magic, since it was still wet. Then the lady took clean clothes from the chair to give to the groom. The girl was happy, but then the guy asked her to wait outside the door while he changed. Alicia was immediately taken aback. All the pleasure disappeared from her face from his request. She ran out of the room, slamming the door in shame, apologizing for such an absurdity. The young man wondered if every morning would be like this for him now. The boys entered the hall where the Duke was waiting for them. The young man wished them a good day and apologized for being late. The father asked the reason for their delay. Leafy appeared from behind the door and treacherously told about their morning flirtation with each other. The couple looked in her direction in bewilderment, but the girl had already disappeared from sight. Goro was surprised and apologized for making the guys come early in the morning, but suddenly it dawned on him. The Lord thought fearfully about another meaning of flirting. He looked fearfully at Fake, because the latter had promised him not to do stupid things. They quickly calmed him down, clarifying that he had misunderstood everything. Alicia only helped the young man comb his hair after waking up. That was all. The father calmed down. But in any case, he called him quite early, because he had business to do during the day, so he wanted to talk to him before leaving. He asked Faika if he still wanted to get an aristocratic education. The hero enthusiastically confirmed his wish, especially since all the affairs in the palace had been settled at that ball. That day, the young man completely disgraced himself. Greetings, elementary manners, even dancing. Everything turned out simply disgusting. There was nothing to do. He had always lived as a commoner, far from the palace. But it was no longer possible. He needed to master the basics. Goro saw no need to hurry. The young man was not often in public, and the workload on him would immediately increase. The hero did not agree with him. He could not disgrace either Alicia or the Lord himself. In that case, the father decided to entrust this matter to Alicia and Leffy. They are quite competent, and it will be easier for Fake himself to study with close people in his free time. Alicia was happy. Now they would be able to spend time together and study. Fake didn't have anything against it either. He thanked his father-in-law. His father instructed him not to overdo it and not to forget his main duty, a blacksmith. The young man again agreed with him. Then it was time to talk about more important issues. Lore showed a small book in his hand. He handed it over to Fake. The conversation was about buying his store. It was time to choose a place to live. The man has prepared several options from which you can choose any one. The young man remembered that they had not yet decided when and where to open the workshop. There were many different options. Fake and Alicia looked at them carefully. One of the proposed buildings caught the guy's attention. This store turned out to be insanely cheap. The Lord's face took on a strange expression when the guys turned their attention to this house. The girl also decided so. The price was 3 times lower than the others, and it was located on the Street of Adventurers. There was not just a store, but a whole forge to boot, plus a living space right there. The other facilities also had forges, but they were either cramped, or the equipment was lame, or the location was unfortunate. They all paled in comparison to this store. He is the most ideal option of all possible. The father clarified whether the young man had chosen him. The Duke came to his senses. Goral, of course, added it to the list, but would not recommend this option. Alicia asked her father why he had this particular opinion. The conditions were really good, but the price was questionable. There was clearly a catch. Namely, a ghost lived there. Goral said this in all seriousness. The hero was perplexed and asked his father-in-law what he meant. The girl shook with fear when she heard about the ghost, and the guy was even more surprised at what the man was talking about. If he had talked about monsters, one might have thought about it to believe it. But ghosts don't exist. The previous owner, and the one before him, quickly abandoned the property, precisely because of the ghost that appeared there. According to rumors, a blacksmith had once died there. The young man did not particularly believe in such fairy tales. The spirit of the deceased wandered around the workshop, which is why the Duke was against this option. Alicia was angry and scared. She scolded her father for even offering them this horrible place. Gorl justified himself by saying that there was really good equipment there. He decided to show it for the sake of completeness. Fake admitted honestly because he didn't really believe in ghosts and other mysticism. It didn't bother him at all. The bride, on the contrary, was embarrassed, and very much so. She was on the verge of hysteria. However, this was still the best option, and the rumors could have been just fiction. The guy still wondered why the previous owners had refused the store. There was also a possibility of a simple coincidence. Not choosing this option just because of the stupid gossip about ghosts is a real waste, especially considering its location. Although it was on the outskirts of the Street of Adventures, but for business, an ideal place. If you open a workshop there, a lot of potential clients will pass by. Fake had to become the best blacksmith in the world, and also be worthy of the title of Alicia's husband. Although he didn't yet know what would make him the greatest, but certainly not the title of the owner of an unprofitable shop. To implement his plans, the young man needed a location, and this point was ideal. But looking at his family, the young man saw that these two were scared, so there was no point in pressuring them. He suggested that they just look at the store before making a decision. The Lord asked if Fake was sure he wasn't afraid, but the young man stood his ground. If it was a ghostly type of monster, it would be a different matter. But it was an ordinary ghost, so there shouldn't be any problems. Ghost monsters and ghosts are two different things. In other words, demons can be defeated, but ghosts cannot. Rumors about ghosts sometimes appeared, but they were all dubious, and Falke did not really understand it. Gorl gave his consent to choose any option he liked. He agreed in advance and took the keys. Taking the bundle, the hero thanked his father, and at that point the conversation came to an end. It was time for the man to go about his business. The guy was happy. Now he had a plan for the day. He suggested that his bride go browsing the shops, but this time in person. The girl hesitated. The young man decided that she did not want to. But Alicia was worried about the house in which the ghost lived. He confirmed that they needed to see it too. He was surprised that the bride was so afraid. He thought to himself that she was a cutie. Then the hero suggested going alone. But Alicia didn't want to let him go. Even despite her fear, she was also going to go. Since they would be running the store together, even though they were not yet officially married, she had to be steadfast and strong as the future wife of the blacksmith. The hero looked at her kindly, then called her to go on the journey, and also asked her not to worry, because he would be there. The couple, accompanied by the knights and Leafy, set out on their journey. The townspeople looked at the procession with curiosity, recognizing Lady Alicia and her fiancé. The girl held herself quite confidently, and Fake looked awkward. He was called that blacksmith everyone was talking about, and he was quite young. The woman greeted the aristocrat, complimenting her on her beautiful appearance. The boy thought about how he was not used to so many looks. That was what it meant to be a nobleman. First of all, the young man wanted to examine their main candidate, that same cursed place. The girl asked with displeasure if the young man was still more interested in him. Fika was most attracted by the conditions there. They were beyond competition. Moreover, he never thought that he would be able to afford a workshop in Kiev within his budget. Besides, Alicia herself was delighted with the place until she heard about the ghost. All they needed was to make sure the store was safe, and then the girl would feel better. She didn't have much to grow up with. The lady asked the maid what she thought about the veracity of that ghost. She didn't believe in them either. Bad rumors were going around about that place. Rumors of ghosts are one thing, but it was also said that the residents of this house lost their minds, and the sound of metal could be heard at night. Pre-prepared food disappeared, and many other strange things were said among the people. Probably some of the rumors are fiction. The maid thought that until they knew for sure whether these were rumors or not, it would be better not to risk themselves and buy the premises. Fake listened to her words. He wondered if it was really as scary as everyone said. They arrived at the place. There was a rather large structure in front of them. It looked much more impressive than in the drawings. Alicia thought it was sinister. The shop was a bit shabby, but quite ordinary. This shabby appearance gave it the charm of an old workshop. The girl was shaking with fear. She couldn't even look at him, so they offered her to stay and wait outside. Alicia clung to the young man, asking if he would protect her. She would endure it. Leafy laughed at their behavior. The knights themselves decided to stay outside, but in case of danger, they must be called immediately. The guys went inside. The room was dark and strange sounds were heard. Fake and Alicia were scared out of their wits when the creaking began to get louder and footsteps could be clearly heard. Someone was coming down the stairs. He called Alicia. Then the person showed himself completely and saw the young man. They also recognized him. It was Rig. An unexpected acquaintance was surprised that the one who wanted to buy the building turned out to be fake. Now everything became clear to him. The name seemed familiar to him even then, but since the address was from the Barnasto house, he could not have expected it. The buyer was Mr. Fake. The young man was surprised that he was addressed in such a respectful manner. He did not think that someone would change the style of addressing him. Apparently it happened because of the difference in positions. Such was the formation of an aristocrat. It turns out that Rig was the merchant who owned the building. The guy was grateful to the hero's comrades in another way. It turned out that the girl in the mask was Lady Alicia. The girl confirmed that the young man was her fiancé. An acquaintance recalled their conversation with the hero. When they were agreeing on the price, tension and excitement were reflected on his face. The next moment, he took off his hat and bowed his head, asking for forgiveness. The guy did not know about their relationship and behaved rudely. Fake asked him to raise his head. The girl added that they were the ones hiding their statuses, and if Rig still hadn't guessed anything, for her it meant complete success. The young man supported the bride. He also asked to communicate with them as before, but the acquaintance refused. Although he appreciated their kindness, the young man decided to get down to business, because the guys came to inspect the premises. The buyers were surprised that he would show them everything himself, because they had not planned this. It turned out that right before their arrival, Rig was cleaning. He did not expect to show up so early. The guests apologized. They just wanted to see the store in person, so they came right away. The guy still insisted on his candidacy, if they did not mind. Fake agreed and decided to rely on him completely. They got down to business. The young man pointed ahead where they stood. There was a trading area. Shelves, stands. All the equipment for the goods remained in place. It turned out to be quite convenient for customers. The young man already thought that it would be enough to simply buy the goods, and he would be able to open a shop right away. Behind the counter was the entrance to the storeroom. Another door led to a corridor. There were several empty rooms. They then came to a huge double door that led into the forge, connected to the main building. Overall, everything was quite old, but the equipment and tools were still in place. Alicia was delighted with such amazing equipment. It seems that the previous owner was also seriously into blacksmithing. It was rightly said that the first owner of this building was a legendary blacksmith. Braid was surprised. He didn't know about such a blacksmith. People said that his skills were on par with the founder of the Barnasto house. They constantly competed with each other, thereby improving their creations. Fake was surprised that his fiancé knew anything about this. The girl explained that she knew, but did not go into details. She had only heard that he was mass-producing incredible weapons. Rig added his knowledge. The creations of the legendary blacksmith Bali are incredibly valuable. Some have survived to their time, despite the bad reputation that has arisen around them. In his later years, this master worked with an obsession bordering on madness. Alicia remembered the cursed weapon. Rig of the story about the swords, Bistella, which the people considered a cursed creation. Fake also heard about them. There were rumors that these blades were dangerous, weapons that had absorbed the resentment of their creator or owner and could warp the mind of the one who wielded them. The boy pointed to the wall where the sword was hanging. It was one of Bestel's creations. Fake was looking at the blade when he suddenly felt something strange. Alicia was worried if everything was okay with her fiancé. He reassured her, confirming that everything was fine. For a moment, a strong pain pierced the young man's head. Or perhaps he imagined it. He began to doubt. Rig noticed this and decided that perhaps the blacksmith should not buy this place. He was asked why he thought so, whether he had also heard the rumors about ghosts. The story happened before the guy bought the shop. The blacksmith who bought it earlier went crazy, after which he could no longer practice his craft. Fake was amazed. Could all this be true? And yet the reason remained unknown. The church was called. Even the saint examined both the sword and the building, but no one found anything. Curses can be weakened by magic, and a saint could even remove it completely. But many cursed blades were left as is. Their power grew, and only a strong-willed owner could pacify them. The boys looked at the blade. Fake asked if it was cursed after all, but Rig didn't know. However, Bestel had bequeathed it to be displayed there. The king of that time, being obliged to him, allowed the sword to remain. The hero wondered if the rumors and curses were real. There was no clarity yet. Then it was time to inspect the living quarters on the second floor. The young man figured that if he opened a workshop there, he would have to spend the night there. It was spacious inside. All the amenities were in place. The rooms were equipped, ideal even for housing security. This was definitely the best option of all that they had considered. The inspection came to an end. Rig asked what Fake thought about the building. Apart from the bad reputation, the conditions were great. The young man liked everything very much. But they were planning to look at other options, so he asked permission to think about it a little. The seller agreed. He would wait for their decision. Leafy volunteered to escort the young couple to the next site. Afterwards, they looked at a few more places. Somewhere the forge was spacious, and the store was cramped. Somewhere, the opposite. There were living quarters, sometimes not, even if the equipment was good. The appearance was too unremarkable. Bestel's workshop. All the others seemed like compromises and did not inspire enthusiasm. And the prices were too high. You need a combination of conditions and price. It was only in that place, and all because of its specialness. The most depressing thing was the location. All the other points were located far from the street of adventurers. It will be difficult to attract customers. But if Fake was a famous master, this would not be a problem. But for a blacksmith with no name, like him, it could become a stumbling block. Returning back, the maid asked the young man whether Bestel's workshop remained the favorite. He agreed, one could say that. But he was also interested in their opinion on the matter. Leafy knew that, if you put your prejudices aside, the conditions there were the best possible. Alicia thought so too, but when she thought about the curse or the ghost of Bestel, she felt uneasy. The maid also worried about the potential danger to both of them. If anything, the guy would gladly ask him what it felt like to work at the anvil. After all, the master was a legendary blacksmith, whose name was remembered until their times. The girl started to wail that Fake would get injured or cursed, or, in the worst case, unable to work. Then Leafy suggested that they learn more about the history of the forge. If they could confirm that it was safe there, Alicia would also give her consent. She wanted to create better conditions for the groom's workshop. He thanked Alicia for even considering the option, but the girl did everything for him. Bestel's forge, not wanting to waste time. As they approached the place, they noticed a man, and it was not Sir Rig. Alicia was immediately horrified. The girl turned to the guests. It was Almay. She greeted Fike, whom they had not seen for a long time. Then she greeted his fiancé. She heard from the mentor, but still could not believe that the girl in the mask turned out to be Alicia. Alma felt ashamed. She probably behaved inappropriately, so she apologized to her. Alicia assured her not to worry, but thought of one inappropriateness that had happened between them. But that was an understatement for her.